Well, before I welcome you all to the meeting,
I can go again.
Jen, you want to go down, or we'll wait 5 minutes?
No, actually, you can start now and run downstairs. I need to write the forms. You can start them.
Okay. Is this our agenda? This is it? Thank you. Good evening, and welcome to the April 25th meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. First item today is a presentation from Neil Ganja from USGS, right. I knew you were on that campus. And he and some others, maybe from MBL, have been doing some work in West Falmouth Harbor. So it's a brief update on water quality studies in West Falmouth Harbor. Thanks, Neil.
Do I need to do anything projector-wise, or is it just?
You mean Neil is a real field person? He actually goes out to the field. Maura says she sees you there all the time.
Oh, I've seen you down there.
That's a good sign.
I get muddy.
Yeah.
I like to get muddy.
How do we turn the projector on? I'm unfamiliar with that.
Oh.
I can certainly do it if you want to.
Sure.
Assuming that's-
Is that true?
I think it's in my job description to do this anyway.
If you want, I'll call my daughter.
I think it's
Is it coming?
warmed up. Yeah, there we go. It's nice fade in. Well, I appreciate the accommodation of the commission to allow us to show the work we've been doing. Oh, yeah, it works. Okay. And I know you guys are very busy. I can see by the paperwork in front of you, so I'm going to keep this brief, and I just wanted to update you on the work we've been doing. My name is Neil Ganju. I'm an oceanographer with USGS in Woods Hole. Prior to this, I was in California, USGS, working in San Francisco Bay. Very different system, but just as important. A lot of people live by San Francisco Bay as well as West Falmouth Harbor, impacted by anthropogenic activities. So West Falmouth Harbor, just like many estuaries along the East Coast, are impacted by land use, agriculture, septic systems, and high loads of nutrients to the estuary. And these are two very large estuaries along the East Coast of the U.S. This is Barnegat Bay, New Jersey, which is on the north side of Atlantic City, and the one on the right is Chincoteague Bay, which straddles Virginia and Maryland. Both of these are very much like West Falmouth Harbor, and they're extremely shallow. They used to be covered with seagrass, very healthy shellfish communities, and now due to land use, agriculture runoff, both of them have lost a lot of seagrass, just like West Falmouth Harbor. As many of you know, this is West Falmouth Harbor on the west side of Cape Cod, obviously, on the east side of Buzzards Bay. And naturally, there's a large groundwater aquifer over the, where Otis is basically, and that groundwater seeps out naturally into the harbor. But the treatment at the treatment plant in the past, which used to spray the sewage on the infiltration beds, led to high levels of nitrate, which is a form of nitrogen, seeping into the groundwater and eventually making its way to the harbor. And from my understanding, that has been remediated, and now it's much better treated at the plant, but that groundwater is still contaminated, as it takes 8 to 10 years to move from the plant down to the harbor. So due to that high level of nitrogen coming in, there's been a lot of macroalgae and phytoplankton growth, and the seagrass have basically been drowned out, and presently they don't exist in much of the harbor. The other consequence of all of that nitrogen coming in is the oxygen levels in the water drop pretty low at nighttime in the summer, and that can kill fish, it can kill clams, things like that. These are the distributions of seagrass in the past from Costa and Hampson. So on the left you have 1979's distribution. You can see pretty much all of the harbor was covered in seagrass, even in the southern part, which is now, oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Well, I won't even try to do it. The south part of the harbor now, there's very little seagrass, and in the years that we've been there, in the last few years, we snorkel and we dive in all these parts, and in the south part especially, the water quality is quite poor, and the bed is very fluffy organic detritus, which is not good for anything really. The healthiest embayment is right by the mouth on the north embayment there off of Little Island. And if you go snorkeling in there, you see scallops, you see crabs, you see very beautiful seagrass meadows. if you compare, let me see if I can actually get the laser working. That's not bad.
It's at the end?
It's the one at the end. Oh, gotcha. Okay. So if you go at the northeast corner of Massapequa Creek, this is where a lot of the nitrogen comes in, and then here's South Cove down at the south. This end is very fresh, lots of nitrogen. This end is a little saltier with not much nitrogen in the water, but a lot of macroalgae. This is just showing a very high resolution time series of dissolved oxygen in the water. So the blue is from Massapequa Creek up here, and the red is from the South Cove. Basically, all I'm trying to show you here is that there are periods in the summertime at night, and all these really low points are at night, where the oxygen drops pretty close to zero. So that basically means anything that needs oxygen, like a fish, is going to die if it stays there. And this is persistent through the summertime. And it's not good, obviously, but this is due to the high levels of nitrogen and the high primary productivity that happens when the sun is out. And so a lot of these changes, when you see this sort of, these drops, this is actually probably due to cloud cover, less sunlight. This period here was actually when there's a lot of wind mixing the water and adding oxygen to the water. So our goals, we've been working there for summer 2009, I started working in the harbor. Initial goals were just get really high resolution measurements of how the water moves through the harbor, and then make an actual model, a numerical model with a computer of the harbor. And then to also measure some of these water quality parameters like salinity, nitrate, dissolved oxygen, to help develop ecological models. And so the step we're working on now is to actually develop a model that simulates the seagrass, and to see if we cut off the nitrate load as the plume from the groundwater plant, from the treatment plant, is reduced, can we actually allow seagrass to return? So just to give you an idea of the kind of instruments we deploy, these are velocity meters. These are on the bed of West Falmouth Harbor during the summer of 2010. These are water quality components, optical dissolved oxygen probes, salinity probes, temperature probes, et cetera. So we usually deploy these things. They can stay down there for months on end, and then we'll go out with a boat and make really high resolution measurements in the cross section, because these are just measuring one point. These instruments that we tow back and forth across channels or on boats will give us a full profile of velocity, salinity, temperature. And this is all work from summer of 2010. A lot of data here. I don't intend for you to look at any of this except to see that these are 5-minute data. So all these lines are connected by points that are collected every 5 minutes. So these are water levels at the mouth. So at the harbor, we have about a 2-meter tide range, about 1.5 meters at the biggest tides. So it's a pretty well-flushed system, but because of the poor water quality, the nitrate and the high macroalgae, the water quality is poor, even though it gets flushed really well. And then the other thing that's interesting is the salinity at the mouth. This is showing the highest salinities are flood tide, waters coming from Buzzards Bay. The lowest are groundwater mixing with that water and then coming out. And it's a pretty good signal. You're seeing about 1 part per thousand of salinity changing due to the groundwater. And we actually published a paper showing that we're able to extract freshwater flux numbers. The actual groundwater input we're able to extract from this, and that's actually quite a big finding. Don't worry about the time varying pattern. We've decided that that's actually an artifact of the method, but the mean value is about 0.2 cubic meters per second, which is the same as 50 gallons per second. So you can imagine 50 milk gallons per second of groundwater. That's about what comes into the harbor, at least during this period, summer of 2010. The other really cool thing we did is we towed a surfboard around with instruments strapped to the bottom of it. So basically they're sampling the very top few centimeters of the water. We towed it around early in the morning, so this is before the sun is out, so there's not a lot of biological activity. And we're able to find the actual discrete point sources of where fresh water comes in, and we found, you'll see these white arrows, are where we found the biggest sources of fresh water. And associated with each one of those is a peak in nitrate. So these are basically the spots where the highest water loads are coming in and the highest nitrogen loads are coming in from that groundwater plume. And we repeated this in March of the following year, exact same patterns, different nitrate levels, but the same patterns. Now what you can do with that is you can plot the salinity versus the nitrate at all those little points, all through the harbor. And you get this big sneeze of points, but what it shows you is at different locations. So these black and green points are Massapequa Creek. The red and the blue points are Snug Harbor, what we call Snug Harbor, which is that northeast section of the harbor. If you carry the slope of that line down to zero, it tells you what the nitrate is with the groundwater that's actually coming in. And it shows you that there's two different concentrations associated with the two different parts of the harbor. So Snug Harbor, that northeast corner, and actually maybe I can back up, that's right here. And if you ever drive along that road and walk out, you'll see how mucky the bed is and how much macroalgae there is. the groundwater in there is coming at a very high concentration, 260 micromolar, and I'm not actually an ecologist or a biogeochemist, but from what I hear, that's pretty high. And then in Mashpaka Creek, it's about half that, and that's because it's a little further away from the plume from the plant. But this is all new stuff, a new way to estimate what the actual concentration is that comes in with the groundwater, and this can help come up with a loading estimate from the plant. This is what our hydrodynamic model looks like. So this is a computer model. This is a 10-meter resolution. So each one of these little pixels that you can't really see are 10-meter boxes of and this is showing the depth throughout the harbor. So we've actually run this model for those papers we published. And one of the neat things that we can do with the model is we can put little particles throughout the model, scattered throughout the harbor depth-wise and laterally. And then we can run the model. And this is actually showing the track of each one of those particles. Well, this is probably 1 out of every 10, because if I plotted all of them, it would be really, really messy. But the cool thing it shows is it shows you some of these embayments where particles get trapped. So you can see these little clockwise, counterclockwise circles in here and in this embayment in the deeper section of the harbor, and especially down here at Oyster Pond, where if you've ever driven over the bike path, there's just a little culvert connecting it. And if a particle was in there, it basically circles around and around until it can eventually get out in ebb tide and out the harbor. And this is a fancy way of saying that the residence time, the amount of time these particles spent, averaged about 1.5 to 2 days, which is pretty close in line with other work that's been done, like the Mass Estuaries Project. So the main things I actually want to update the commission on are what we plan on doing this summer and get your input on a few things. One of them is we want to install a weather station. So this is like a 3-meter tall, 1.6-meter wide tripod kind of thing, just a metal pole. Has a little wind meter on it, has a couple light sensors. And we can certainly put it on private land if we could find a spot, or public land, and any input that the commission may have on where we could put it would be really valuable. The reason we want to do this is one of the things that's really hard to get is meteorological data, and you can spend days trying to find good data, and you never know if it's actually been collected by people who know what they're doing. So any input from you guys on that would be great. And after we deploy that, our plan is to put out a few sensors in the harbor, this time looking specifically at things that affect seagrass, things like light attenuation, turbidity, basically sediment in the water, chlorophyll, which is a proxy for phytoplankton, dissolved oxygen, salinity, temperature. Plan is to do this where there's a healthy bed, do it where there used to be healthy beds, and do it where there have never been any beds, and see what those parameters look like now, and hopefully be able to predict in the future. And we're currently working on integrating a Chesapeake Bay seagrass model, which has parameterizations for several different species, so we can put the parameters for the species that are in West Falmouth Harbor, integrate that into our hydrodynamic model, and then a student from Spain, PhD student, is coming to help develop and apply that model. And that's what we're doing this year. And with that, I'd like to take any questions or suggestions you guys might have.
Okay, thanks, Neil.
Yep.
I'm going to suggest that you might want to talk to Maury,
Sure.
knows every inch of West Falmouth Harbor,
Well, not every inch, a lot of it.
but about a good place for the
Okay.
weather station.
Okay.
And she also probably will know who owns the land.
For town property, I don't know what height this is, how much area you need, and what kind of exposure you need.
Area-wise, it's about 1.6 meters, so the tripod legs are probably like that wide.
Yeah. Height?
3 meters, about 10 feet.
Okay.
It can't be next to obviously some trees or a structure. It needs a little open, maybe about as much open space as this room, so that it gets a good wind reading.
There are 3 places. There's a public landing
Right.
in Snug Harbor.
In Snug, oh, you mean the town dock, or do you mean
No.
in Snug Harbor?
In Snug Harbor,
Is
has a public landing there.
Okay.
If you came out of Cordwood Landing Road, go over the street.
Yep.
There's a,
Over Nashawina and right onto
Nashawina.
the, yeah.
and right in front, there's public land there.
I did not know that was
Yeah.
public.
Yeah.
Cordwood Landing is a landing. It goes
It's
right
a
to the.
small
Right, no, I've been there.
Yeah.
We didn't
Yeah.
know it was public. We actually knocked on doors to get access to that. We didn't know.
Yeah, there's a private dock.
Right.
And then right next to it is
Okay.
public, a town landing.
Okay,
There's also a town landing, but I think there's too many trees right by the Chapcoy Bridge.
right, okay.
And then, and I don't know what the deed restriction is on Facet's Point, but that is another place that has a conservation restriction, but it has public access to it.
Which is
so,
Facet's Point? Which one is that?
Off of Little Island Road,
Oh, okay.
at the very end.
Oh,
By the outer
Yeah.
harbor.
Oh,
The
that would be
left-hand
nice.
side and out to the point, the right-hand side is Wright Beach. But
Right.
those are, those are,
okay.
places where you can get to.
Right.
Probably the Snug Harbor one, only because if, this is where we have the biggest problem, well, actually, the
Right.
one down by the Nashwina Bridge too.
Yeah.
Where you have the more serious
Yeah.
problems with the quality of the water, but those would be what I
Okay.
would think. And how long would it be up for?
It would probably be up June, July, August, September.
Okay,
One concern is vandalism, if it's accessible, because there's a solar panel and there's a little logger box,
Yeah.
and those are right at eye level. And so I had talked to Chuck Martinson about some ideas, and he knew a couple private landowners who might be amenable to putting it
Yeah.
on their private docks,
yeah,
which would be nice.
Yep.
But public would be better, because then it'd be easy for us to just go and check it.
yeah. Well, actually, Swift Street has a public access too.
Swift is the one right just south, north of the town dock, but south of
Correct.
Nashwina, right?
Yeah, and that goes right down to the water, and that has all residential, private homes down there, so it's
Okay.
more secluded, but,
Right.
again,
Okay.
but there are some trees there, but
Okay.
it's still, anyway,
That's
those
good
would
input.
just be.
Thank you.
Very happy you're doing this.
Okay.
I'd like you to get rid of the sewer treatment plant while you're at it.
That's not on the
That's not on the
2012
table.
agenda.
No, that'll be next year, thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Yes.
I want to compliment you. You're a very good orator.
Oh, thank you.
I wrote down a couple of really heavy-duty words that I didn't understand.
Huh?
Cool and messy, you know, it's
Those are
simple.
scientific terms, actually.
This is very basic scientific. I'm very appreciative. The first time that I sat on this board in the 90s, Maury was already at the forefront of recognizing the issues that were going to be the next decade and more of what you're now bringing to a very simple graph. I'm very grateful. You did a tremendous job for someone who's not a scientist. That was a great explanation of why we have put efforts forward on this and continued success.
Oh, I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Ed?
Yes. I believe I heard, if I heard you right, at one point in time in your presentation, you were talking about dissolved oxygen, and you showed the graph, and I guess it was a daily range of fluctuation.
That's right.
And I think I heard you say that the trough, the low end of the fluctuation, was the readings taking at night. And you said that in a sort of a matter-of-fact way,
Right.
sort of saying that, well, I guess you all know that
Right, right.
oxygen levels go down at night. And I don't know that. Can you explain that to me if that's,
And
if
I didn't
I heard you
know that
correctly?
3 years ago either, because I'm actually civil engineering by training. So it turns out that when you have high primary productivity, so when you have lots of organisms in the water that like all this nitrate that comes in, so things like phytoplankton, things like even seagrass also, macroalgae, when you give them those high loads of nutrients, they go into overdrive producing biomass, basically, growing. And by doing that, they produce a lot of oxygen when the sun is out. And so they'll supersaturate the water past 100%. And actually, the Massapequa Creek goes to 200%. And I had to check the sensors because I thought maybe there's something wrong, but it's that eutrophic. And then at night, those same organisms respire, so they end up taking up oxygen from the water and producing carbon dioxide. And so at night, all of them have to respire. Basically, they're doing that, the biological things within their cells that require oxygen. So they suck that up, and that's what drops the levels at night. And what's really fascinating about the harbor is that no matter where you are in the harbor, and no matter what the tide is doing, the day-night signal is much bigger than the tides. One would think that if it's flood tide and water from Buzzards Bay, which is relatively clean, is coming in, you would think that that would get rid of any kind of day-night signal, and it doesn't. And basically what that's telling you is that the organisms that are on the bed of the harbor, the macroalgae, they're dominating what happens in the water, which makes sense. The water's, if you go out to West Falmouth Harbor, the average depth is probably that much. And so what's on the bed is controlling what happens in the water.
But even the ocean water, if it has phytoplankton, then it's going to have the same
That's
signal.
right. Just to a lesser
concentrate.
degree. That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Anything else?
No, I just think that's very significant, and I guess anytime anybody's presenting data on dissolved oxygen, it's essential, I guess, to really
Know what time of
understand
day.
what time of day these measurements were taking
Exactly.
place.
And I
If
think-
you're varying the time of day, you can have totally invalid research.
So one of the most important aspects of this, of what Neil just showed, is the question of what's happening to our shellfish beds, and particularly the soft shell clams, who don't clam up like the quahogs do. And so if you have a lot of, and you said you saw it the last time you were out, you're starting to see the sea lice.
Yes, already,
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, if you have a lot of macroalgae, then they're producing a lot of oxygen during the day because they're photosynthesizing. But at night, all of that biomass is respiring, and so they suck up the oxygen, sometimes putting it down to zero.
And I would point out, this is why the coalition, when they do their, they send the bay watchers out or whichever people, they
Yeah.
always do it early in the morning, for exactly that reason.
I'm glad you told me that, because I'm thinking
That's
about
what
some
you're
of that
thinking
data
Yeah,
as I
that's-
think about this issue.
Yeah.
So they are
I
controlling
think
for
they make
that.
sure that everyone goes before, I think it's crack of dawn is when they want people out there. And
Yeah.
if not, then they make a note that, oh, this was done at 9 AM, but they're very careful about that, for that exact reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you happen to know why they're not showing data on Little Pond in the last year or so?
I
That's
don't know.
another issue.
I can
Okay.
find, remind me about that, and I'll call somebody who would know that. Okay, any other questions? Mike?
Will the model be calibrated into what?
Yeah, so that's interesting. See, as sort of on the research end of things, we try not to do what consultants do, which is calibrate a model very fully to all these data and then use it to infer things into the future. What we try to do is first understand what the model is doing and why it's doing it. So for example, for West Falmouth Harbor, we ran the model using the water levels that we measured at the mouth. And then we look and see, do the data match elsewhere in the harbor with the model? And if they match well enough, then we leave it alone. And well enough is a subjective term, and this is a contentious thing in what we do and how you quantify that performance. Because anybody can say we calibrated the model, but the question is how much did you calibrate it and how much did you tweak? And what a lot of, and no offense to any consultants, but what a lot of consultants will do is they will, for example, West Falmouth Harbor, if they got a poor agreement in Massapequa Creek for water level, let's say, they would go and artificially add roughness to the bottom in the model. They would say, okay, now the bottom is a lot rougher. By doing that, they can slow the water down and make that water level agree better with the data, when it could have been something totally different, like they have bad data. So what we try to do is not willy-nilly calibrate the model without precise evidence that says we should add roughness here, for example. So typically, if we find error in how the model reproduces something, we'll look at the other errors, like the error in the wind data, the error in the tidal level data, and calibration is usually kept to a minimum because of that, and we'll state the performance very clearly in our journal articles and what went into it so that anyone else could reproduce the same methodology that we did without willy-nilly turning knobs. And that's a very esoteric and contentious point in our field, but
Well, presumably that would lead to the next question, right? If there are places where it didn't match too well,
we would,
then you could go out and do field work, get
That's-
money again.
and we investigate, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
Well, it also brings to the point of how will you use the model to predict turning off of a sort of treatment plant?
Right.
If you're not sure it's calibrated now, you're not,
Right.
how useful it will be for that. And the second, and I'll leave it alone, how well does the mass flux from the watershed match the flow you're getting into the model today?
I'll answer that question first. So Kevin Kroger, who also works in our office, did a water mass budget for the watershed that goes in West Falmouth Harbor. And that was based on rainfall data, I think, going prior to 1996 or so, which was a little drier than what we are now.
Right.
And his total flow was 0.165 cubic meters per second. We get 0.19, and that's with quite a bit more rainfall, so it's pretty close. That's about 20% error, which for this kind of work is pretty good. I think the Mass Estuaries project used Kevin's data in their report. And I don't know of any other estimates for groundwater flux into West Falmouth Harbor other than Kevin's paper and the Mass Estuaries project, as far as I know.
Which might be the same thing.
They might be the same thing. As to your first question, so what I did, for example, in San Francisco Bay, which is a very politically charged atmosphere, there were
As opposed to Falmouth.
as opposed to, well, it's the same, but maybe 50 times more people sitting in the room. One of the things that happened there, for example, was the San Francisco airport wanted to do an expansion of a runway. And so they hired a consultant to run the model to say what that would do to the morphology of the bay. And they came up with all these predictions about how it would change, and we reviewed it, and what we said was, the only thing you can really use any model for something like that, is to run the model without the runway and then with the runway, and look at the difference, and say, here's a scenario of what it would look like. So for what we do in West Falmouth, for example, is we would run the model with different scenarios of nutrient input, and then take the differences of those scenarios. And basically, by doing that, we're sort of divorcing ourselves from the calibration thing and saying, basically, this is what the model would predict relative to some other scenario. So here's a scenario of, let's say, 10 micromolar, here's 200. This is the difference. And that way, you're sort of not saying, this is what the future looks like. This is what the model says mechanically what would happen. And I could give you, my dissertation had a chapter on philosophy of modeling. Next time I could do that for you guys if you're interested. But it's very, I mean, I know exactly what you're saying, and it's a long discussion. All of your questions are really important. That's exactly the problem in what we do.
Well, they're important to me, but
No,
probably
they're-
nobody else.
No, I
And I'll
mean,
let you guys discuss that over
I'd love
coffee
to discuss,
sometime.
well, I think in these days with climate models and everything, that's a discussion that has to be had.
Well, maybe we will invite you back then,
I'm nearby.
but, yeah. We-
I
I won't ignore you, Mike. Let me just see if there are any more questions from the board.
I just had a question. It was sort of a general map of the entire harbor, and you had these, just your general white arrows showing the point sources of the nitrogen
Right.
intrusion. But it didn't look like there was anything south of Snug
Yeah.
Harbor,
Yeah,
and yet South Cove is the most eutrophic.
yeah.
So I was just wondering why you're not picking up anything south of the town dock.
That was the first thing that we noticed when we did that survey, was South Cove had nothing coming in. There's a couple possible explanations. One would be that there was enough nitrogen coming into the northern part of the harbor over the years, and there was enough biomass being produced and dying in the winter that somehow that pool of stuff made its way to the South Cove, just from the tides kind of getting sloshed back and forth. And some of the modeling shows that there is transfer of water from the north to the south. So stuff can come down from Snug Harbor on ebb tide, and then on the following flood tide, it can get pushed into South Cove.
Because I was looking at the particle
Right.
map, and it looked like there was a pretty straight,
Yeah,
I mean,
straight
they were
shots.
squiggly,
Yeah.
but they're going straight out of Snug Harbor, out the mouth.
It sure seems that way. And yeah, that's a mystery. We don't know the answer to that yet.
But those particles are in the water, right?
That's right.
So presumably, depending on what this is, if it's flocculent material, it might have settled out.
It could just move along the bed and be very fluffy and just kind of, it's hard to say.
But I mean, it just looked like black and white. I mean, the South Cove is the most eutrophic. It looks like the worst situation, yet
Yeah, but
the
there
point
might not
source
be-
of the nutrient intrusion is coming from the very north, I mean, very far away. And if you look at the currents, there doesn't look like there's a lot of mixing going in and out. And I
But-
just want,
But those are the data that are available right
Well,
now.
yeah.
there is a little
I'm
bit.
surprised it's just not a nutrient, a point source
Right.
Yeah.
for the nitrogen.
And we took samples
South.
down at the culvert across the bike trail down there last summer and didn't see any nitrate in the water at all. But it's possible it's all getting consumed in Oyster Pond, that's what that little
Yeah.
pond is called? It's
Yep.
possible it's all getting consumed there. What I would say is when we look at model animations of a tracer, if we put something coming in from the northeast, we found a phasing where the stuff comes down on ebb tide, and on flood tide it can get pushed down to South Cove. So if you do that over 10 years, the mean of that over 10 years, eventually stuff could be getting pushed down to South Cove, but that's total speculation. And I don't know why the seagrass died in South Cove.
And the only reason I'm surprised is if you know the old plume maps, it's the direction from the wastewater treatment plant. These are since I was,
Yep.
25 years
Yep.
ago. And then they put the sewage treatment plant in. We're showing it in a direction of south-west-west. And those points look like it's going directly west.
Right. And I think,
So it's like,
the watershed, the groundwater contours show that a lot of fresh water should be going to the south part, but we didn't find any. And there's a lot of reasons for that. It could be the geology, because this is on the moraine side. It could be that there's just irregular geology. And, if you go into Snug Harbor and you go to Nashawina Road, that spot we were talking about, and you stand there, you see groundwater pouring
Yeah.
out. You go a little north, there's nothing. You go from north, and now it's pouring out again. So it's very site-specific,
You
so
can see
it
the
could be.
clouding.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can see it.
okay.
Good. Mike?
Do you have a test for
Mike?
the other species?
Mike? Yeah.
Oh, Mike.
Mike needs a mic.
3 mics. 4 mics.
My name's Michael McGrath. I'm a civil engineer and land surveyor, but I design denitrification systems. I know a lot about nitrogen. I can't help but notice that occasionally on the shore near houses, there's a green algae that I and an MBL scientist have described as most likely where wastewater that's in the groundwater is coming through in a concentrated plume. And some of those may be discharging ammonia. So my question was very simple. Do you measure for ammonia?
The instrument that I showed the data from is actually just a nitrate sensor. It's optical, so it can only measure nitrate. I do know that our colleagues at MBL have collected water samples along that time also, and the ammonium levels were quite a bit lower than nitrate. Nitrate's dominant there, but obviously like in Nauset Marsh, ammonium's dominant and nitrate is minimal.
You're learning a lot of biology. I'm impressed.
I've learned a lot. I was trained in hydraulics. This is all new.
Yeah. Well, good.
Great.
Good to mix the fields. Any other questions? Any other questions from the board?
Thank you very much.
Well, thanks.
Great.
And
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Neil, if you
We appreciate
could
it.
send some PDFs of any publications
Sure.
on this to Jen,
No problem.
That was
Yeah, I
a
was
great
gonna-
presentation.
Thanks, guys.
that'd
Appreciate
be
it.
good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Michelle is very sorry that she's missing this.
I'll make sure she sees the top.
Oh, all right. I'll tell her you did a good job. Okay. Request to continue under a notice of intent. Paul Janke, 194 Edgewater Drive East, East Falmouth, for permission to replace two 10-inch existing pilings and to install two new 10-inch pilings. Jen?
Yes, Madam Chairman, the applicant represented his request to continue to May 19th, May 9th.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions on the board? Any questions from the audience? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? This is for an extension to May 9th? Unanimous, so moved. Mark and Evelyn Perrault, 57 Madeline Road, East Falmouth, for permission to install, in addition, native mitigation plantings and the associated excavating and landscaping.
Yes, Madam Chairman, the applicant's representative has requested a continuance until May 16th, Barbara? You have 15th on your letter, okay. Oh, sorry. 16th.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions on the board? Any questions from the audience? Okay, motion is a continuance to May 16th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Minutes, vote 3/28/2012. All right, that's quick. 4/18. I assume that was just in our packet, because I didn't have it. Okay, we'll wait till next week. Request for a determination of applicability. Jeffrey Taylor, 74 Dodson Way, Wacoit, Massachusetts, for permission to enlarge the existing deck.
Yes, Madam Chairman, staff has reviewed the project, we're recommending that you continue under the same bylaw for resource area boundaries not to be affected.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions on the board?
I do.
Yeah.
Enlarging an existing deck is sort of a project it's the kind of thing we usually review. Can you just tell us about this and why there's,
It might just be in land
why an
subject to
RDA
coastal
for
storm
enlarging a
flowing.
deck? What sort of,
Tom Bunker, BSF Design. This project was to enlarge the existing deck. It's in an area that's, there's basically no vegetation at all in this area, a very small amount of some of the native shrubs, very far from any resource area, almost 100 feet. from that. We just feel it's a very low-impact project. And there's a large area of, you see, ivy, English and Boston ivy, that the applicant is going to remove from the property as part of the mitigation work.
And Mark visited the site with you?
Yes. Well, not with me. He visited, we visited at different times, but.
Well, Mark's been at the site.
Mark has been at the site.
Yeah,
and-
if Mark's comfortable, I'm comfortable.
I would agree with that.
Any other questions? Did you want to follow up?
No,
at all?
no, I'm
Okay.
fine.
Any questions from the audience? Okay, all in favor of the recommendation?
I made the motion.
I think we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion on the table, which is to accept staff's recommendation of a negative determination, which means they can go ahead with the project, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Kevin Cohn, 400 Edgewater Drive East, East Falmouth, for permission to repair the existing dock by replacing stringers, yokes, cross-bracing, decking, and to reconnect seasonal water and electric to stringers. Jen?
Yes, Madam Chairman, although you have a staff report in front of you that says the recommendation is a positive 3, the staff doesn't have a recommendation for the board at this time. Most of the points in the staff report have been addressed today. Mr. Borselli, the applicant's representative, did drop off some of the information the staff was looking for in terms of the legality of the dock. The dock's been in existence since the 60s, before the Wetlands Protection Act, pretty much grandfathered from the aerials that we've seen and that Mr. Borselli had provided today. It seems that it's in the same, it's substantially in the same footprint. The issue is that they are, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, they're proposing to basically take the entire dock off except for the pilings and replace the whole structure. So the board has to consider that and see what your comfort level is at that point. So basically, the only thing that is going to be left there are the pilings for the dock and the dolphin pilings to the side. And there was an old Chapter 91 license, what was that, dated like in the 60s?
Yes.
In the 60s, it actually does show the dock and 5 of those pilings at that time. I think there are a few more out there, but the Chapter 91 license from that time period is a bit big.
So the project is leave the pilings but completely rebuild the dock?
That is correct, that's my understanding, yes.
Okay, and staff is not making a recommendation?
We're not making
You're
a
leaving it up
recommendation
to
at
the,
that. The positive C was based on some information that the staff felt was necessary to review the project, but that information has been provided, and as far as just rebuilding the whole structure, we're just going to
leave it up to the board?
commission to decide on that one.
Okay. So we don't have a motion to put on the table, and what I'm going to suggest is if people have questions for Mike, that we can answer within 5 minutes.
I do. I have, actually, after reading the, and I know some of the issues have already been ironed out, but after reading this, it sounds like there are a lot of issues with this. So I understand that you're just building it in the same footprint, but if there are more pilings and there's no, you have the Chapter 91 license, Jen?
Yes, I have the Chapter 91 license.
A copy of
from
it?
the 1960s and the 2006 one.
Okay.
So basically what they're doing is they're leaving what we can see in the 60s.
I guess
are
my
the dolphin pilings on the side, so not really
When was this,
concerned about those right now.
when was it built, Mike?
In the late 50s, early 60s.
So these creosote pilings are from the late 50s, early 60s, and you're going to put a brand-new structure on 50-year-old pilings?
Yes, I can elaborate on that if you give me a
yeah.
minute. The pilings were all inspected by a dock builder. They were probed, they were looked at. Surprisingly, even at the mud line, they're not showing a lot of degradation. So there was a decision made because they're in relatively good condition, and considering cost, and the fact that that's more construction activity in a resource area, there was no need to really do that.
Oh, yeah, I'm not happy they're creosote, but probably after 50 years, there's probably not a whole lot left there.
They were in good shape.
They were in good shape.
It was surprising. So the work, construction methodology was submitted today. That was one of the things that was lacking. I interviewed the dock builder today, John Hanson. He has a small work float.
Is that what was there?
Yes.
Yeah,
It's not part of the dock.
okay.
The idea is to work in manageable sections, all by hand, from either on top of the decking of the dock or on the float to the side, pry off with a crowbar or by hand all the decking, remove the stringers by hand carry those to a dumpster, take off the cross members, then reestablish like the most outer section, all by hand. And now you have a work platform at the very end, and now you just paint your way out of the room, so to speak, pry off more decking, take off stringers, take off cross bracing, and sort of build the bridge back to land, or rebuild it, so.
So my question with the pilings is that if by any chance there is a new piling that has to be put in, I mean, then we're starting, and this will not happen, and if it does, then it really should be a notice of intent, but.
Well, that's why they looked at them very closely. They probed them, they drove spikes into the edges, and they looked at them, and there's absolutely no
Okay, good.
plan to
That's,
replace
I
them.
mean, that's good. I'm happy you're not having to rip them out and put them in. It's just usually, I think of repair as being a few boards or whatever, not everything except the pilings left. But it's a licensed dock.
We may
So-
find out that some of the stringers and cross members don't have to be replaced, but we wanted to reserve the right to do that in case we discover some after we take the decking off. Some of them are for certain need to be replaced. By my observation, at least like a third. And it almost becomes an economics, why bother leaving a few or some of them in if you're going to be going out, taking the decking off,
Right.
replacing
Oh,
it.
yeah.
There was no heavy equipment needed, so we thought an RDA was appropriate.
And then my last question is, it says in the staff report that all the wetland resource areas are not shown, including salt marsh bank, salt pond, or coastal bank, and the area depicted as dune on the seaward side has extensive Spartina patents. So, and the mean high water doesn't seem to jive either. So are we gonna get this on the plan?
You got a corrected plan.
Yeah,
Oh,
Mike
okay.
can correct it as planned, and as always, any determination you make, we will recommend that the resource boundaries are not confirmed.
Resource boundaries is not confirmed with this.
But we
Okay.
did have a discussion about correctly labeling them.
So if there was something else that was going to be done, it'd have to be a,
Yeah, we did the corrections.
Yeah.
There's a coastal bank, it's a wall, but it is a coastal bank, so we made the changes in the plan today. I met with Mark this morning. Our ability to coordinate a meeting before today just didn't happen, so we were faced with a meeting today, and like 10 o'clock, so I had hand-delivered new stuff by like 1:30 to him. And then he was in the field, and Jen and I went over it.
That's all, thank you.
okay, let me see if there are any other questions before we put a motion on the table. Ed? you
I
a
just have
question?
one, and that, you're out there doing the work, and in the process of doing the work, something's not going right, and somebody suddenly realizes, well, I think we're going to have to replace this piling. What happens next?
He can't replace a piling with this.
I want to hear Mr.
Well, I'll
Silly.
tell you what would probably happen. They'd call me, and I'd say, don't replace the piling until we go back to conservation. Keep that piling in place, finish the rest of the work, and we'd have to apply for a permit to replace that one piling under a new application, and at that point, they'd have to partially disassemble part of the dock, take out the piling, and reinstall it. But I will tell you that the reason we inspected the pilings was to avoid that. There are no pilings that are in need of removal at this point. In 10 years, they may. So there's an economic element to this too for the owner. They're expensive to replace. And a judgment was made to try to nurse it along for another 10 years or so.
Okay, are there any other questions?
Is any of this going over salt marsh? So-
No.
Well, there's The research
Yeah.
Tina,
areas
that's
aren't
right.
Yeah, that's
confirmed, not-
right, but the reason I'm
Well-
saying this, because are you gonna put light penetrating, panels over the salt marsh area?
Well, we're not crossing any salt marsh, it's just beach, and he wants to use standard decking with the required spacing. We're not crossing any vegetation. Right now, it's like 2x10s with 1/8 spacing, and he wants to use 2x6s with 3/4 inch
Here,
spacing.
Lauren.
Well, it's what is it right now?
Like
2x10s.
2x10s with 1/8 inch spacing. They're almost, some of them are.
And you're going to 2x6s,
2x6 with.
okay, thanks. No eelgrass?
No.
Somebody want to make a motion?
I have one more
Ed?
question, if I
Yep.
may. The administrator doesn't have a recommendation. And can you tell me why that is? Do you have some reservations?
Mr. Porcelli has submitted all the necessary information. I guess the staff is a little bit uneasy with
Public access.
basically recreating the entire dock without taking the pilings out. You're basically building a new dock, and anytime you guys see a new dock, even if it's the reconstruction of an existing licensed structure in the same footprint, you see it under notice. Because they're not impacting any of the land under ocean or land containing shellfish with the installation of pilings. The applicant felt that they could come forward under an RDA since none of the work would be absolutely affecting the resource area. That said, the piling issue, I do have, and I haven't seen their report or inspection report on piling, so I don't know and I, to be quite honest with you, did not go out to the site, because Mark has been out there, very good notes and photos, but that was one of his major concerns, is just the amount of work that's being done out there. But as far as all the technical and procedural information that also lent to Mark's original recommendation of a +3, a lot of that information, a lot of those issues have been resolved. I would caution the board and Mr. Porcelli that if they do find a piling that has to be replaced or two, they're gonna have to come in under notice.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's just getting to be a little too piecemeal.
I'd like to make a motion, if I may, for a -3, with the resource areas not, boundaries not confirmed by this RDA, with the understanding from the applicant that if it has, the scope of the work goes into the pilings, that a notice of intent is required. Second.
Maury?
I had one more quick question. I'm reading the interim license. It says it's supposed to have public access? It says public right to use and pass freely.
They're supposed to post signs. I didn't see any signs posted.
Well, I didn't see signs, but how do they pass freely over this? I'm looking at it.
They just walk around the end of it,
What end?
the upland end.
Over the salt marsh?
Well, there's a spot at the Landwood end that you can actually walk, you can walk along the beach, and then you can just scoot up along the edge of the dock and go around it.
So there's got to be a sign, and there's got to be somewhere that people know.
Would you remind them that they need a sign?
I mean, that's why I like these under notice, because now we can't attach any of this.
There's a motion on the, you have another question, Ed?
Yeah, I'm looking at the photographs here. I see a lot of floats. I'm wondering, I guess there's some floats at the end of the structure? No?
Those are work floats, Ed.
I discovered the floats by photos from Mark today. The contractor is working in this area, and he's chomping at the bit, so he's already mobilized his floats in hopes that you were going to approve this tonight.
Okay, so
Otherwise,
what
he has to
we're
go.
approving is just one straight,
Yeah, these are work
like
floats.
3 or 4 foot wide pier with no T at the end and no float at the end.
These all go back.
Okay.
Okay, the motion on the table is for a negative determination. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
6 yes, 1 opposed.
Thank you.
Any abstention? Thanks, Mike. H. Russell Lemke, 63 Quonset Road, Falmouth, for permission to approve the existing dock footprint.
Yes, Madam Chairman, staff repeats the project, we're recommending negative terms and state in the bylaw with the resource area boundaries not confined.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions on the board? Any questions from the audience? Okay, motion on the table is for a negative determination to accept staff's recommendation. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. N-Star Electric Company, 400 Oyster Pond Road, formerly 54 Oyster Pond Road, Woods Hole, Massachusetts, for permission to install a water service line to serve Lot 100.
Yes, Madam Chairman, staff reviewed the project. We're recommending negative 2 under the bylaw and negative 3 under the state with the resource area boundaries not confined.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions on the board? Any questions from the audience? All in favor of the motion on the table, which is to accept staff's recommendation for a negative determination, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Donna Bigelow, 11 Narragansett Street, East Falmouth, for permission to pump, fill, and abandon the existing leach pit, use the existing septic tank, and install a new Title V leach field.
Yes,
Jen.
Madam Chairman, staff is recommending a negative 2 under the state in the bylaw with the resource area boundaries not confined.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions on the board? Any questions from the audience? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of the motion on the table, which is to accept staff's recommendation for a negative determination, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Marcia Testa, 46 East Harbor Drive, East Falmouth, for permission to replace boards on the existing pier float and house deck.
Yes, Madam Chairman, we are recommending a negative 2 under the bylaw and a negative 3 under the state for the deck replacement in the food program, and a positive 3 under the state and bylaw for the pier deck replacement, and that is because the pier is not in compliance.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Any questions from the audience? Okay, hearing none, motion on the table is a negative determination for the house deck, right?
For the decking, on the deck replacement.
Right, house deck, and a
Yep.
positive determination on the existing pier float.
Yep.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Continued request for determination of applicability. Rachel and Brian Switzer, 4 Quistit Avenue, Woods Hole, for permission to construct a 12-foot by 22-foot second-floor addition using existing foundation with no footprint expansion.
Yes, Madam Chairman, we're recommending a negative negative 2 under the bylaw, negative 3 under the state resource area boundaries not confirmed.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions on the board? Any questions from the audience? Hearing none, all in favor of motion on the table, which is to accept staff's recommendation of a negative determination, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Heinz Penzance Point Nominee Trust, 160 Penzance Point, Woods Hole, for permission to relocate and replace 2 existing float pilings, replace 2 other existing float pilings, and modify the float to accept the new piling locations.
Yes, Madam Chairman, the applicant has withdrawn their RDA request.
All right, just cross that one out. Geraldine Klein Robinar, 217 Sipowicet Road and Langley Road, map 3710, 015, 073A, for permission to vista prune.
Yes, Madam Chairman, the applicant is requesting another continuance to May 9th. They are attempting to get permission of the property owner to do vista pruning on that property. And there is a easement on that property that specifically requires that the property owner be notified, so.
Okay.
All right.
Move to May 9th.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Robert Aspel, 5 Sycamore Street, East Falmouth, for permission to construct a 40-square-foot porch and a 50-square-foot addition to remove the garage to the foundation and construct a 2-story garage, install an invert pipe at the garage foundation and the associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping.
Yes, Madam Chairman, we're recommending a negative 200 state in the bylaw with the resource area not good.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions from anybody? Okay. Motion on the table is to accept staff's recommendation of a negative determination. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Requests for hearings under a notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. I certainly do. Thank you. Just like- it's caught. First is David Wald, 1 Quinnapoxet Avenue, Falmouth, Massachusetts, for permission to remove the existing concrete walls and pillars to replace with a new fieldstone wall, fieldstone risers, and bluestone tread stairs, to remove 2 separate sets of steps, install a fieldstone patio with steps, a pervious driveway, plantings, utilities to construct, and utilities, to construct and maintain a balcony and the associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. Jen?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I'll save any of my comments or questions for Mr. Costa's presentation.
Good evening, Matt.
Good evening. Thank you for the record. Matt Costa, Christopher Costa and Associates. This property is located along Heights, in the Heights along Grand Ave and corner of Quinnapoxet. It's basically at the peak as you go by the casino, right at the top of the hill. The reason that we're here is because of the bluff that comes up to Grand Ave creates a coastal bank at the top of that because of the slope criteria, and we're proposing work within the 100-foot buffer to that coastal bank. What we're proposing is a second-story addition, a patio area, and a corner of the driveway we noted is part of that application because it does clip the 100-foot buffer. We're also proposing to rebuild the existing retaining wall. If you've been out there, it's that white retaining wall that's located across the front of the property, starting at our property corner, which is located here in the plan, with a new retaining wall. We calculated all of the impervious area within the 100-foot buffer and calculated what's going to be new impervious area. Those are in your buffer zone site calculations, and we proposed mitigation at the appropriate ratio. The mitigation plantings are going to be located along the newly installed retaining wall, simply because of the roadway in between us and the actual resource area. That's pretty much the only place we could put them. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Jen? Pretty straightforward?
It's pretty straightforward. If you've been out to the site, it's across the road. I don't really have too many at all concerns.
Okay, Ted?
It's attached to the coastal bank.
Some
Well,
nice bird habitat there with those bushes. Ted?
Yeah, I was a site officer, and I mean, you're in a resource area, and
Buffer 2.
right, but
Which is a resource area under the town bylaw.
and it just wasn't clear. Your grade, there's no grades, so I can only try to read the steps going up, and you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps going up, or 4 to the level. You're not planning on filling this existing grade any, because you've got 6 feet to get to the door threshold.
But there's design grades out here already, the 36, 5, 36,
Right,
7.
that's the top of the wall, right?
We're not proposing to fill anything in that area. We're basically going to replace that wall
Well,
as it is.
If you stand there on the existing ground, and there is existing vegetation there, it's 6 feet to the door threshold.
Oh, in the front, over
Yeah.
here?
No, here,
Well, this is the
on this
door
side.
threshold.
There's 2 doors on this side, I mean, unless you're taking
Oh,
it
they're,
out.
they're probably gonna have steps come down to the patio then.
Yeah, but we're talking about 6 feet of grade elevation. And it's, what I'm
There-
trying to get at is if you.
There's no fill proposed as far as
We have a fieldstone patio, and there's 6 feet between the existing ground and that door. And I see 5 steps going up the patio, which at 6-inch risers tells us it's 2.5 feet. But they're not telling us how you're getting from
The door.
there to the door, and that's another 3.5 feet. And that's a lot of more steps. I mean, it's 7 more steps. Are
Okay.
you planning on putting 7 more steps? We can't see because you have a proposed balcony. What I'm trying to say is I don't want you to get to a situation where you're gonna fill so high with this fieldstone to access those doors that you're gonna have a 3-to-1 run with your fill, and which is gonna take you out 12 feet from the edge of patio into the resource area. I just wanna know what's going on.
We were supplied a plan by the landscape designer that showed a patio to be placed in that area, and that they wanted to rebuild the retaining walls. I don't know what the design grade of that patio is going to be. The balcony up above is a second-story balcony.
Right.
So if they need to do some slight grading in that area, I mean, it's part of the notice of intent that we're filing does include landscaping and associated grading. So I think that that would cover it.
Well, what I'm saying would, that patio would have to be 4 feet high, have to be up at least 4 feet high in order to even just put 3 steps in front of those doors that are coming out. 3 more steps coming down on those doors to get to, so 4 feet high, doing a 2-to-1 slope is 8 feet beyond the edge of the patio. You're showing 4 feet of some planting beds around it. And that patio is going to be 4 feet high above the existing grade. So there's going to have to be a lot of fill if that's a fieldstone patio.
Well, then there might be some extra fill that would be needed in that area. But again, that's still coming under the grading and landscaping as part of the notice.
Well, it's not the slope and the run of it. I mean, if you got a 3-to-1 slope, which is basically angle repose, and you plant on that, and you're 4 feet up, 3 times 4 is 12 feet. You're showing 4 feet, so you're going out twice as far with that entire bank going around. If that's what's happening, I don't know because I don't have any grades, but I'm just trying to read your steps. And all I see is that patio is going to be 2.5 feet above existing grade from 5 steps. That's all I know.
Yeah, I think-
Matt, is there a landscape architectural plan on this that you have in your office?
Yes.
Maybe you could provide that, does that show the grading on it at all?
I would assume so. I can't recall for sure.
Okay, maybe you could
I could-
provide that to the board and possibly some cut and fill calcs on this, to make it a bit more comfortable for them.
Sure.
Thank you.
Anything else, Ted?
Nope, that's it.
Mike?
Just putting Ted's comments, the floor is at 40.6. The ground surface that's next to the house is at 35.6 essentially. So there's a 4-foot drop that you're going to get out that door somehow. And if it's a step down is one issue, you're fine. If it's, they look odd, but it is what it is. On the other hand, if you're bringing in fill to make that patio flush with the floor, you got another issue. I guess that's the question.
Yep. Which Matt will supply us with the answer the next time we see him. Yes?
2
Maureen?
questions, Matt. Top of wall elevation? Will that be on that landscape plan?
Sure.
And do you have a DEP number yet?
Yes, they all have these.
Okay.
The top of the wall, I think, is shown on the corner. Hard to pick out, but I think it is.
Yes, Tom.
Usually it says TOW.
Landscape architect, the landscape plans and top of wall.
Because that will dictate what maybe they were planning for fill, the walls. 3.5, 4 feet tall.
Yes.
When I reviewed the site, I was, and looking at the plan, I didn't know if that was actually an egress point or just a patio for them to come out, and a balcony is how it's proposed, balcony. I don't know if the grade change, or the question of grade change is to accomplish egress into that set of doors on the gable, because there's also another set of doors up higher that would be included in that proposed balcony scenario going down. So I don't know if that's their intent, or just to have a sitting area in front of the balconies, because it doesn't show any
The
egress.
balcony's the second story.
Right. So I don't know if any of that.
I'll
I
kind
think
of
he's going to
supply
provide
you
us
with all the
I think
grades
he's
you
going to
need.
supply us with more information, what they're planning to do there.
And it was just interesting to see the transformation of this area from when I was a teenager. This was this is
Different.
a lot more residential.
Arthur?
I don't need any more information for this project. Being site-specific, I think it kind of speaks for itself, so I'm all set, thank you.
Okay. Yes?
Ditto.
Ditto. Okay. Matt, when would you come see us again? Do you have a
Matt,
date?
if you can get that information to us by next Wednesday, they don't need information on the night, because they can fairly light on the,
That'd be great. I request a continuance to the 9th, please.
Okay,
So
thanks.
At the request of the applicant, this will be continued till May 9th.
We have a second?
Second.
Any questions? Any questions on the board? Any questions from the audience? Okay, all in favor of continuance to May 9th, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Here you go. Thanks, Matt. M6 Point Trust, care of Ann and Leon Piatelli, 25 Point Road, North Falmouth, for permission to demolish the existing house and construct a 6-bedroom, single-family house with attached garage, decks, porch, pool, spa, stone terrace, retaining walls, to install a new Title V sewage disposal system, driveway, utilities, irrigation well, mitigation trees and shrubs, reconstruct timber stairs, to allow vista pruning and the associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. Jen?
yes, Madam Chairman, I'll save any of my comments until, the applicant's presentation.
Good evening, Mike.
Good evening, my name is Michael McGrath. I'm a registered engineer and registered professional land surveyor. I work for Holmes & McGrath. We prepared the notice of intent. I'm accompanied by Chris Horiuchi from Horiuchi Saline and John McConnell, the architect of the new house. This site is on Point Road. It's out near the end of Point Road. It's on the north side of Point Road. This is Buzzards Bay. There's a coastal bank. There's a velocity zone. There's the top of the coastal bank. And then in green, we have the resource area buffers. There's a resource area buffer zone A that's measured from the top of the coastal bank, 50 feet here and 75 feet from a small erosion area that's underneath the steps. The plan shows in this location, dashed, the existing house. The existing house is going to be torn down and the new house is going to be constructed. The green line is your jurisdiction. So most of the house is outside of your jurisdiction, and this is the main house. I'm tracing with my finger. There's going to be a wood deck, a stone terrace, and a pool. When we come to Falmouth, we talk about mitigation plantings, and the existing house was built in, I think, 1980, and there is 105 square foot of the existing structure that lies within the A zone of the eroding coastal bank. We are building an additional 329 square feet in the B portion, the Falmouth Wetland Regulation Buffer Zone B, under your regulations, we have to have an additional 658 square feet of plantings for this. We subtracted the benefit of the 105 square feet, and we show mitigation plantings on both sides. That totaled the required area. And when we went to the site and did an instrument survey, we found that there were stumps that were shown across the site. There's 2 here, there's 1 over here, there's a couple over here. You issued an order of conditions on reconstructing or vegetating the coastal bank, and if there was a certificate of compliance issued, I think, in 1995. The current owner bought this in 1998, and she says that there was 1 tree that existed at that time, and it was cut down because of storm damage, and she said the rest of the trees did not exist at the time when she purchased it. We furnished you an aerial photograph that showed it was after 1998. It shows that there's no trees existing. So we have shown on the plan that we're also installing 11 trees to make up for the stumps that exist. Our applicant is proposing to purchase the land. He's not an owner. He didn't cut down the trees, obviously. So the rest of this work is outside your jurisdiction, and so I believe that what we have drawn and described is an appropriate project to be approved under your bylaw. Chris Horiuchi's here if you want to have her discuss the types of plants that she specified in the resource area buffer A. Chris?
As Mike noted, we have 555 square feet of mitigation planting. Which are distributed on 2 sides of the property. It's a combination of our mitigation tree plantings, or our replacement tree plantings. There are 11 trees, native red cedars, and native shrub, bayberry and beach plum, 3-gallon spaced 3 feet on center. In addition to the 11 replacement trees under the bylaw, we also have an additional tree within the 1,000 square foot threshold. And in addition to that, there are going to be 3 trees that are in the resource area B that will need to be replaced as part of the construction, or that need to be removed during construction, and we're showing that in the buffer zone A. Mike also alluded to along the stairways there's some erosion that's outside of our limit of work, and we're proposing to plant some native ground cover in that area, plants that will do well on the slope and underneath the deck itself.
I forgot to describe that the existing stairs over the coastal bank are in a state of disrepair. So we are proposing to completely reconstruct the stairs. When we surveyed it, we found that the stair was slightly over the lot line. So in order to move it, it will end up in a slightly different location on the beach, but I consider that a minimus change.
I'd say those stairs were in a precarious position.
Yes.
I was nervous that I didn't have my cell phone as I was going down them. I thought I might plunge down to the bottom of the bank. Okay, Jen.
Mike, do you have a letter from the actual property owner?
No, but the actual property owners, we gave you 2 signature pages. One was signed by one of the owners.
And what is, I see one signature page on 8 of 9, what's the other one?
It's a blurry one signed by one of the daughters of the owner.
Where? Where's my blurry?
I don't have it in mine.
They were stapled together when we filed it.
Aerial.
Oh, everything's you
I'll,
just,
I'll give you my copy.
email me the letter, so. Can you get me a letter, please, Mike? This doesn't cover the base, the board, please.
I understand.
Thank you. Because I could go to Jeff's signature page, which is the same signature for all three, for the owner, the applicant, and you.
We have a contract that
No, I
authorizes
understand.
us.
I absolutely understand, Mike, I'm giving you a hard time. If you could just get me a letter from her, I'd really appreciate it, make things a lot clearer.
I
That's just a
understand.
little blurry and it's making my
I-
eyes water when I look at it.
I understand.
Thank you. I don't have any questions at this time, Madam Chairman, not any more questions or concerns that I always raise when, I mean, I understand the idea is to optimize the view, which is why the plantings are, and I'm sure more is going to raise that concern, so that's not any question.
Okay.
There's going to be, all I have to say is outside of your jurisdiction, there's going to be a lot of cut and fill. Yeah.
But it's out of our jurisdiction. Ed, you weren't site officer, but the site officer isn't here, so I'm starting at your end.
Yeah, I guess I'm just looking at the trees to be planted here. I'm also looking at the schematics, and I'm kind of wondering what if these trees are going to be allowed to grow out to their full and mature natural height and diameter, what that diameter is, because as I'm looking at them on the plan, I'm sort of getting the impression that they're awfully close together, and that they won't therefore have an opportunity to grow out to their full and mature natural dimensions. Am I wrong or right? I don't know.
Yes, we will allow them to grow to their full and natural dimension. One of the concerns that we have is that this area is very exposed, and planting the trees so that they can derive the benefit of the shelter that they provide as a grouping is one of the things that we are proposing to do here. We're also proposing planting smaller trees that hopefully will acclimate over time, and we're also recommending that the trees be wrapped during the winter.
But how far apart are they?
I believe we've got them on 8-foot spacing.
5 foot.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Arthur?
No questions.
Thomas?
Interesting project. Glad to see the stairs being enveloped into this, because yes, they are in disrepair. Interesting to have the pool fencing inclusive to the footprint, which is really, sometimes that becomes a debatable thing. And it's nice to see it incorporated in here. It just becomes de minimis on the site. I made a little comment about being in my teens in the Heights. This house, as is, definitely reminds me of my teenage years. This is a larger home, and it is going to be affecting the majority of the site. But I see this with some careful thought. The vista, I can understand that. Anytime they're plantings, they're compromising a certain portion of their property anyways. But the idea of it is to have a view, and that's very understandable with me. They do have the structure itself, the outside amenities are where the old home was. If you look at the activities, anytime they pull things back like this, it impresses me because you take the structure back, you're taking all the activities back as well. Yes, there is a pool, but the layout of the pool and such, it defines an edge there. And where that edge now is what used to be what would have been the foundation of the other house and the deck. And it's a whole different activity as it sits, as opposed to what's here. You're drawing everything back, which is a big plus.
So you're not having more further.
Right,
Yeah,
you know,
I see what you're saying.
anytime you do that, you're really sucking it back. It does, you're changing the flow of all the foot traffic, you're bringing everything back further. A very eclectic property. Yes, there's gonna be a lot of alteration at the street side, but it's due. I mean, there's a cycle into the life of a property. The cycle that's there now is long overdue, and I don't have much other on that.
No question.
Nope.
Okay. Maury?
Couple questions. The limit of work on the landscape plan is different than the limit of work on the engineered plan. So which one is it? The engineered plan is sort of curved and the landscape plan is straight across. And you don't show the outline of the vegetation, the existing vegetation Mike's plan does. You just have vegetation.
She just said, she deferred to my limit of work.
Oh, to Mike's. Well, I think it should be on the landscape plan, because whoever's gonna do the landscaping, yeah, just, you will adjust it to match your plan, because the landscaping guy is gonna use this plan, I'm sure. The other thing, are you bringing fill down for that erosion control area that you're gonna plant, that's eroded out?
I
And
think
if
the
so-
idea was to stabilize it, and I know it's washed out. We could plant,
Yeah.
I think we need to essentially get the material there so that we can stabilize it. So again, I think that if, we can plant in that area as it is now without bringing in fill, we'll do that.
But which is it gonna be?
Um,
I'm not designing this.
Yeah, in the process of rebuilding the steps,
If we bring Phil down, it'd be less than 5 yards. It'd be very small.
And how would you do that, by hand?
Yes.
Okay. 5 yards by hand. All right, I just want to make sure, and I want to make sure that it's,
Stabilized on the slope.
is it going to be probably like a sand mix, only because I don't want to see,
If you've been down there,
Recycled.
the material that's underneath there is organic, it's not sand. The material underneath the
Yeah.
stairs.
all right, I just want to make sure you're not going to bring in a lot of invasives with the brush dump dirt. I mean, that's what worries me, because there's not a lot of, I don't know. We'll deliberate on that one. The other question, the cedar trees are 5 foot on center, which is very de minimis for cedars, and I'd rather see, and I like your idea of interplanting with smaller cedars, or smaller, usually it says smaller trees, but I'm assuming cedars. They do a lot better when they're smaller, and I understand you probably want to get I don't know, it's not really a screen, but I'd rather see more smaller trees further apart that will establish better than to have these, nursery-grown 6 to 8 footers that are gonna get blasted out there. And the bayberry will protect them as they grow. So, I mean, he's better at it than I am, but I mean, just from being in the field, I see the 6 to 8 footers or 5 to 6 footers, they're just toast. You can burlap them, you can do whatever you want, but, the attrition rate is pretty high versus, 2 to 3 footers that can hide in the bayberry, which is a hardier variety down there. That would just be my recommendation, more of them, smaller, so the cost wouldn't be any different, it'd just be more survival rate. That was a question. And I understand the view, but if you look at Mike's plan, the stumps that were, and I know it wasn't those people, but I'm glad to see that you're replacing with cedars. I don't know what the stump cuts were, but there are only 2 of them really that were out in the front lawn anyway, so, I don't know. 5 in the front lawn. You'll go on that, I'm sure, Ted. There is no dimension of any part of the structure I did scale it all, but it would be nice when I'm doing mitigation, that I don't have that fancy CAD machine that you have, that you just put, you know, the length of the wall or whatever. Because for me to come up with a mitigation, I had to scale it all. And all the plantings are gonna be in the lawn, just so you're not surprised. We don't let you dig it all out and put mulch down. And I wanna know, you said you're gonna put irrigation in? I'm just gonna ask the board while we're all right here. We haven't been allowing irrigated lawns in our jurisdiction, drip irrigation for the establishment of the shrubbery, so, just so you don't get surprised. And the soils there, just, if you're planting the trees, I'm a little concerned because the perk rate was 17 minutes for 1 inch, so it's probably all clay. So I just make sure that,
It's not clay, it's
Glacial tilt.
it's glacial tilt, but it's a silt, it's not clay.
Right.
whatever. 17 minutes an inch, and I didn't,
That's true.
pardon? Yeah, I'm just
It
saying,
was
I
measured
just want to
as
make sure the plants survive, because at that rate, it's very slow, and if they're not planted correctly, and hopefully the landscaping architect will make sure that they're done right, because when they sit in dense soil like that, they don't live. And again, the plantings were close. Runoff from the patio. Is there any mitigation for that? Or is it a pervious patio? It just says stone terrace. Is it?
We have dry wells.
We showed drywall for roof runoff.
Roof runoff.
I will have to,
Is the wall gonna be a little higher?
It's a seawall.
Fine, then I'm not worried about it. You don't have to worry about that then. I was just afraid it was gonna shear off. And I think that's it for right now. Mike?
Maybe a little out of the jurisdiction here, but I would be fearful that proposed well is subject to saltwater intrusion. You're pretty close, you've got a low transmissivity. You're pumping we don't have really control over how much irrigation goes. I suggest somebody take a hard look at that before somebody sprays salt water around.
I understand. What we have discovered is that well, we went down as low as we could go when we did the test pit. I think it was 18 feet. It was restrained more by the existing trees and not being able to dig the driveway up. But diagonally across the street, we found down at about the same level it turned into sand. So we're thinking that the well is going to be in sand. And my experience is that distance is far enough away that we should not normally get any salt water. Normally.
If you have, not knowing what's there, it's hard to speculate if the sand is one issue. The second is, it's a pretty narrow peninsula. Your area for recharge rate up gradient of that well is very small. It's capped by a low permeability soil. You turn the pump on and you get water as you need. It draws down to where it does, and I'm just suggesting that you have a potential of getting saltwater intrusion, and it isn't going to do your plants any good, and somebody should really think about that before you spend somebody's money installing a well that may not work.
I understand your comments. However, down at the south tip of Penzance Point, I had a client drive an irrigation well, and he got fresh water for a very long time. In an area that's narrower than this. So, yes, there's a risk. But if you go back to the map of West Falmouth Harbor, there are places where there's springs, and if you were to drive a well close to that and you drew enough, you'd get salt water. But in other places, you wouldn't have the risk of salt water. There's a pretty good sized head most of the time on the fresh water. So I'm not worried about the irrigation well in the long run. The other point is that we have an alternative test center here at Otis Air Force Base that tests not only alternative septic systems, but they test other things. George Hoyfeld has published a paper that measured the removal rate of 13 different personal care products and household chemicals. And he measured the removal rates through basically drip irrigation and topsoil. He measured a Title V system, and he measured I won't remember exactly how many different types of generic wastewater treatment. And the highest removal rate was in the drip irrigation that was installed in the topsoil. So I know through my research that if you drip a pollutant onto an area with a high amount of carbon, then you will get significant removals of anything that has a what a scientist would call not the correct scientific word is a refractory carbon is one that the bacteria can't break down, but they can break down a huge amount of other carbon compounds. So rather than just say that we shouldn't be allowing irrigation, I actually believe you should be allowing irrigation by putting irrigation wells in, because you will remove a significant portion of pollutants. I think George has removed 8 out of 13. Some of the stuff won't break down. For instance, there was a chemical that's on pajamas for children, and that won't break down. That's, but there are several of the pharmaceuticals were broken down when they passed through.
Okay, I think this is a little.
No, I'm
this
trying to
is
explain why we need.
An interesting subject, but gets a little bit away from the project.
Well, I
could
put
you
an irrigation
clarify?
well in, and you should consider what I just said.
He's saying that if you
So,
take the
no, I know,
groundwater.
But George's report was from taking groundwater? Or
No,
from?
for Title V systems.
Okay,
What
that's
this will
right,
be
that's what I
is,
wanted.
this will actually work better
So-
because it'll be more
But
dilute.
that's apples and oranges then. So you're
No,
saying
no,
that
no,
George
no, no,
used
no,
it from
no, 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 no,
a
no,
septic
no.
system. George used
He's
the water
saying
from the
if you take
septic.
groundwater and it has pollutants in it, which we know some of our groundwater does have pollutants in it, and you put it on this system, if you're taking it up and you're putting it on a vegetated system,
Right.
that's why we have vegetated buffers,
Yes.
then the pollutants will be taken up before that water moves on into the water cycle.
So George wasn't taking it out of a Title V system. He was taking it out of a well.
But you can, believe me.
No, that's the question I gotta ask you.
I am
Put that-
treating it's not groundwater. I'm treating water with the same characteristics as groundwater in a different location, and I'm getting removal of pollutants. So it doesn't matter where the pollutants come from. If there is bacteria there in carbon, they will remove those pollutants that they can attack.
We will take all that into consideration when we deliberate. Mike, are you done?
I'm done.
Ted?
It was a little difficult understanding your area calculations because you didn't carry over the existing with the proposed layout of the house, but I understand you're pulling everything back. But, you know, it's just, we have to kind of draw them in. I mean, I could get a little bit of the driveway and stuff, but I mean, you're using the driveway as the impervious surface of the calculations, but anyway, that'd be nice. Rather than keep going back and forth, but, it won't be a lot of cut and fill for a lot of people thought. This is really well sitting on the landscape. This is really gonna just,
Even with a garage?
huh? No, it's 24 existing.
Okay.
And you got the, you have 20 coming up there, but, on the out, but that's the furthest away from the resource, so the house is gonna sit beautifully. Yeah, the thing with this, the issue with the cedars and their sizes, That's all when you put them in the ground and what kind of quality tree you got. I've seen on projects, cedars go in the ground, come back out, sit out in the sun, and probably not even being well taken care of all through August, then put back in August, then put back out again, and then put back in. And I didn't see any, of course, it was a mild winter this year, but I didn't see much burn on them or anything. They were fine. And I do think the spacing should be good. I like the idea of clustering, and I understand it's on the size for the view is fine. But I do like the idea of the clustering. I think both the bracketing of the mitigation plants are fine, just more spacing on the cedars. And put whatever size you can get, you know, I mean, they're great. The stumps, I'd have to say, it's the first time I believe that nobody in the last 10 or 15 years touched those. Those are cedar stumps, and they're really old. So, you know, that case, but at least you're making the effort to replace those trees. It's great. I don't believe this, the stair, the issue of planting on the stairs, that's not gonna happen. You got a 14-foot rise in 20 feet. You know, you're getting close to a 1-to-1 slope there.
What were you planning to put in there?
Arctostaphylos, which is not a big thriving plant. I mean, you can put the jute max down and try it, but there aren't a lot of plants that are gonna do well out there. But if you got the organic matter, I would suggest trying to get something with a better root system, perhaps a bigger shrub, especially since the stair's gonna be going over it. You know, you can always keep it out of the stairs, but the bearberry is just not, I don't see it. That's hard enough to do just in somebody's garden, let alone try to do it on a 1-to-1 slope.
I guess my thought was that on the steep slope, Ted, if we were going to be digging a lot of bigger holes with bigger plants, we might be destabilizing things, and if we were planting smaller plants in smaller holes, you know, we might have a better chance of establishing material.
Or how about smaller, big plants that are gonna have better root systems?
Yeah,
I mean,
that'll-
the
root
jute's gonna
systems
help.
will
The
grow
jute's
in.
gonna give you 18 months or 2 years of time, but we really need a big rooted plant in there. I mean, that will eventually become a big, because it's just, in the shade of it's on a north slope. It's really a horrible situation. It's a north slope with almost a 1-to-1 slope. And, you know, I mean, I'm surprised there wasn't subsidence on that. I don't know, you may have a lot of clay there. I don't know why that's holding up so well. Exposed.
It has cohesion.
Yeah. Anyway, I think
Well,
that you should look at some sort of, I mean, look at the best rooting plant we could put on the coast with a north slope. I mean,
That's not Rugosa Rose.
no.
Baby.
Yeah, I mean, probably bayberry.
That's what I was gonna say, we could plant, you know, small, again, I mean, we could plant, you know, again, our palette of, you know, 3-gallon
The
bayberry.
pallet's really small on the
Yeah, I
north
know.
slope here.
And, you know, plant them very closely.
I don't know if it'd be,
Fine.
yeah, I mean, I don't know really closely, but I mean, get smaller plants, maybe, you know, 3-gallon and stick them in the jute mat and hopefully.
Hope for the best.
Hope for the best, because that's tough.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
Anything else?
it.
I have a question. When I read this whole paragraph, it says to allow vista pruning. What vista pruning do you plan, considering where your plants are?
Well, I can't find it quickly. I think if you look at what the second last paragraph, the existing plants have been cut low, and we volunteered that they maintain to a height of 4 feet. So I don't know if that's the same as vista.
Oh, these are right at the edge here?
This is existing plant.
Yeah, right. So you're just saying be able to maintain what you're doing to those existing plants?
It's actually, we're volunteering to go a foot higher than what they're doing.
Okay, okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Any other questions?
I just had one. Was
Yep.
that, and that's always been allowed? It says continued vista pruning maintenance in your narrative?
Well, the 1995 order, all it says is that the plants will be installed. It doesn't say that you can't alter.
So his argument is that the way they've been maintained since 1995 is at that 3 feet.
I
Right.
mean, if you want me to read it, there's no limitation. I mean, it just says.
No, don't say anymore. Stop while you're ahead. Are there any other questions? Let me ask the board, do you need any more information? I think you're going to want,
The landscape plan just needed to have the limit of work, it had to mirror whatever he had. You had to have the same wetland resources shown on the plan, like the velocity zone, Falmouth velocity zone, all that stuff, and the shrub line.
yes, you may say something.
It says that the maintenance of the buffer strip will be an ongoing condition of deed as cited in FWR 1012-2. This was in 94 to 89 regs. I have them downstairs. I can bring you the language of that.
Okay.
Citation for your deliberation.
Okay.
On the district attorney's statement request. Okay.
Okay.
We should probably submit the old file onto the record, too. We usually do
Okay,
that, don't we?
submit the old file into the record.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, would everybody be comfortable closing this hearing?
Yes.
And having that plan submitted?
I also agreed to replace the blurry signature page with
Yes.
either a new signature page signed by the owner or a letter.
Right,
Yeah, either one.
Yeah.
okay.
Make a motion to close and take it under advisement.
Second.
Any other questions? Any questions from the audience? Okay. Motion on the table is to close this hearing and take it under advisement.
Thanks, appreciate that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Thank you, everyone. Sorry we didn't get to hear you speak. Maybe next time?
By the way, the Bruins are losing 1-0.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a bunch.
What
Make
period?
our wonderful evening even better.
Yeah, don't trip
What
while you're
period,
falling.
Mike?
Trip and fall on
Mike,
the way out.
what period?
I don't know, my daughter only,
Text you.
she only texts me
Gordon
when
promised
someone,
us
oh, there's a
updates.
new email, wait a second, update.
Is that your phone I heard going off?
No, it's
No?
not a school.
Bring
All
home,
right.
yeah, bring home bread and milk.
Okay, we're on to Joseph Palermo, 105 Quaker Road, West Falmouth, for permission to construct a screened porch and deck on sonotubes, install utilities, mitigation planning, and associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. Jen? Good evening, Barbara. You've been very patient, but I'm sure you enjoyed Neil's presentation.
I did enjoy Neil's presentation, which will prompt me to raise nitrogen loading calculations with y'all again in the future.
All right.
This property is a single-family home. It's on Quaker Road, and it is in part within land subject to coastal storm flowage. And it also is, a portion of the property is within 100 feet of a isolated freshwater wetland, which is a bylaw wetland. It's not a state wetland. The applicant is proposing, if you can see on the plan, he wants to, there is an existing deck, and he would like to create this screen porch and expand the deck and stairs around the screen porch to the existing deck. This is the edge of the isolated wetland. We have proposed mitigation close to your 2-to-1 for in the buffer zone, as far as shrubbery goes, and as well as a couple of red cedars, not red cedars, I'm sorry, hollies. The holly that's shown in the mitigation planting, we've been moving this mitigation planting around a little bit. I brought these pictures, I don't know if anyone went out to see. This is the corner right here, where they have an entrance to their basement here. And we had to pull this mitigation planting down here. I've spoken to Mark about this. We may adjust the exact area where we put the mitigation planting when in fact it's done, but we tried to maintain some access to that point in the cellarway. The other thing the applicant is planning to do is aggressively remove some of the, most of the Boston ivy that's all over the property. He'd like to get rid of that. You can see in this photograph here, there's precious little room available to put in the mitigation plantings where we can stay out from underneath a tree canopy and have things thrive. So although we normally do the 3 gallon, 3 feet on center, we're sort of going to be a little flexible in how these are planted based on, we're almost putting, 4 bushes here and 8 over here, but to try to fill it in. So when we're done, we will have the square footage that we're called for in the notice. The only other aspect of this project that I'd like to discuss with you, the applicant, normally in your order of conditions, if you see fit to close the hearing tonight, requires, you ask that the mitigation plantings be installed prior to any construction. The applicant's family is having a function on Memorial Day weekend. All they really need to get done prior to that function is to replace the existing deck portion. And they would withhold doing everything else until after the function. So I'm asking for your consideration that perhaps with an order of conditions, they could proceed to fix the existing deck once the function's over, get in their plantings, and continue on with the project. I know that's sort of an unusual request, but I have my violin out for him, and he's been very cooperative and willing to do whatever needs to be done.
The existing deck probably could have come in under an RDA.
Well,
So
I thought the whole
we
project could have
consider
been
that.
done under an RDA, and I'm sitting here going, But then I heard Ed, and then there's mitigation planning, and I know what staff really does not like when you have a lot of mitigation planning to have it come in under an RDA, because then you don't have any hook. So, anyways, so that's why I'm asking if we can maybe go forward with replacing the existing deck prior to doing any planting.
Okay, well, let's see what questions people have.
Thank
Mike?
you.
I'm happy.
Mike has no
Glad.
questions. We'll go to Ted.
No questions?
Maury?
No questions.
Tom?
No question.
Arthur?
I'm good.
Ed?
Ditto, 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 ditto.
Ditto, 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 ditto. Then I'll take a,
Hold on a second, this is very unusual. I don't think this has ever happened before.
Usually, it does with,
every once in a while.
I don't remember
I make
it
a
ever
motion
happening.
to close this, take it under advisement with the caveat that the deck, the consideration for the installation of the repair of the existing deck before the mitigation plantings be allowed.
Well, we can do that
Second.
in our deliberation, too. I don't think, I
Okay.
think everybody can be generous with that. All in favor of the motion on the table, which is to close this hearing and take it under advisement, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Barbara, I can't wait to hear about where the trees go in your other project, whether they go to the left, to the right, or right in the middle.
Which other project?
Don't you remember that project in East Falmouth?
Oh, they're all going in a big clump right in the, here,
One side?
one side.
Oh. Good, it's probably better, they'll probably survive better like that.
And I will want staff for that order. Thank you very much, have a good night.
Thank you,
Have a
good
good
night.
one.
Could you, as you go out, I think Mike must be listening to the game, could you tell him he's next? Thank you. Mary Ellen Malloy, 47 Penzance Road, Woods Hole, for permission to repair and maintain the existing stone groin by filling voids with chink stones, repairing seaward steps and the concrete cap walkway that includes widening the walkway to 6 feet and replacing the handrail. Jen?
I'll save any of my comments until after the presentation.
Mike, do you have an update on the game?
No.
Okay.
do you have your butter cards, Mike? we're all so excited about the game, we just might forget these important parts.
My name is Michael McGrath. I'm a registered engineer and professional land surveyor. I work for Homes of McGrath. We prepared the notice of intent. This land is located at 47 Penzance Road. Bottom line is it's about a third of the way down. And the issue is that the existing licensed stone jetty needs some repairs. And so we filed a notice that described the repairs. The existing structure has a concrete walkway on top, and there was a steel handrail, and the steel handrail is broken off, and there are projecting pieces of iron that are sticking up through the concrete. What we propose to do is to add a 8-inch layer of basically marine concrete on top of the structure, and we're going to put in, instead of metal, we're actually going to put in post boxes in the concrete, and we're going to have a removable handrail that's made of a plastic composite. We show you cross-sections of how the work is going to be done, including some details. At the very end, there's always been a set of stairs that the owner could walk down into the bottom of Buzzards Bay, and these stones have been dislodged. So we're showing that there's going to be a little bit of work here in order to, one, create a new transition because we're up 8 inches, but also fix it so that there's a drop now, and we're actually going to put a new concrete step in. This is a licensed structure. It's been there for many years. I believe that the bottom line is that this repair is not going to cause any significant effect. However, today I got a call from Jennifer that when she went to visit the site, the buffer plants in this area had been trimmed. Yes, they have been trimmed. Apparently been trimmed in the last 24 hours by a gardener. So
They were that way yesterday, too. I was there yesterday.
I don't know what to say. I'm not the owner. I'm not
The gardener.
the gardener. But somebody
The
trimmed.
gardener did it. Maybe it was the butler. Maybe you could communicate with the owner that,
You're gonna keep Colonel Mustard
I
out
am,
of here.
yes, I've already communicated through the agent that they cannot trim those plants without a permit from conservation.
This isn't the first time it's been done, it's not the last time it's gonna be done. I have no faith in your client, so.
Or the gardener.
poor Colonel Mustard. All right, moving right on with the project for today. Tom, your site officer.
I like the methodology of the removable rail. I'm just not sure that the licensed structure has a 4-foot pathway, and we're going to increase it to a 6-foot. And that's, there's a lot of activity on top of that. That's why you're here. The slurry for the concrete, the egress is coming along the property line downhill. Are they gonna pump the slurry from all the way up at the top?
No. And there's been a lot of traffic has come down that driveway before, believe me, because,
Oh, I'm familiar with the property, Mike, I'm just,
yeah.
the placement of the concrete, are they doing it with a pump, a concrete pump down? You know, I'm not saying that, just the access, you know, where are they pumping this from, or are they mixing it?
Oh,
They're not gonna take a mixer down there.
well, they have in the past. I believe it. They had a crane down there, they rebuilt all this a little while ago, under, 20 years ago. But if you don't think a concrete mixer can get down there, they'll just have to bring it down with,
That's what I'm asking, is that, you know,
I never thought that you guys would limit the concrete truck, but if you limit the concrete truck, they have to bring it down in
I'm not saying that I'm
motorized
limiting it,
wheelbarrows.
I'm just wondering, are they, because that is, it's turf, it's a substantial downgrade. I just wanted to know if they were gonna pump it in, or if they're gonna, you know, or have
To be blunt, I hadn't thought about that detail till now. So if the concrete truck can't make it down there, they easily bring motorized wheelbarrows and bring it down that way. I don't think I'd want to pump it, that's a long way, Tony.
you know, I'm kind of, if they have permission from the neighbor to come in down that driveway and come across, I don't know.
No.
You know,
No.
I'm just saying, but to go down from the parking lot by the garage and drive a mixer 80,000 pounds plus down that grade is gonna be a challenge. It's nothing that can't be done. I just wanted to know.
I hadn't thought about it, it's a valid point. They can easily bring it down by, in my mind, it's better to bring it down by motorized wheelbarrow than pumping it.
Or would, you know, would they want to use you're saying motorized wheelbarrow, would they want to take it down with a small track machine? You know, a bobcat, that type of thing?
Oh, that was,
It's not wide enough.
I don't think,
Just to get it.
believe
just
me,
to get
that may look like it's soft grass, but that was the vehicle access when they rebuilt the riprap, the vehicle access when they did a lot of the work on they rebuilt this boathouse a while ago, so I believe that may look like it's lawn, but I think it's reinforced.
No other questions? Thank you.
Arthur?
Yeah, Mike, I think Tom's got a good point. I think you're gonna wanna pump that, just to get out to the end. But moving on, what is marine concrete anyway?
It's a special concrete mixture that it resists the concrete, resists the salt.
Okay, that's all I have.
Ed? Maureen?
Just two quick things, Mike. You're going up 8 inches and out 2 feet on each side, am I correct?
No,
1 feet on each,
1 foot on each side?
4 to
No.
6.
no. There's
What's
a-
the maximum width of this now?
if
All right,
you
so a
look-
foot on each side.
No.
It's 4
It
feet.
varies.
It's not centered.
If you look at the section C on page 2,
Yes, it's, but I'm just saying, so it's 2 feet wider.
yes.
Okay.
It's like
That's,
18
Oh, I
inches
see, you're
wide
saying
on
not
one
to
side.
each side.
not each side, just, it's
All
2
right.
feet wider.
Yes, 2 feet wider, 4 feet to 6 feet.
Right. The next question I have, and I'm glad to see the steps going down because you didn't have any public access, which is in your Chapter 91 license. And it states that it has to be there.
There?
Well, if you look at his mean,
Where's this
if
mean
you look
low
at,
water?
well, on this, it's different than on what he just showed us, and that's what my question was gonna be. On your transect for the, that step that you're putting in, the plan view graphic scale,
I'm sorry, I'm reading the license.
the license
it-
states that, in accordance with this license, blah, 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 that you have to allow, the public to exercise its rights to pass freely over or around all structures within such entitled areas. and it must be maintained in good repair, and a public access sign at each property line.
Gee, Mike, you ought to have these signs
And this has to
printed
be
up.
from dawn to dusk. Actually, they give them to you. Am I correct? Doesn't the,
That I do not.
yeah, they,
Who would? Maury, who would give it to you?
It's the state.
the state.
Oh, okay.
They used to give you signs that were
I
very
don't know if
generic.
they do that anymore.
The access across.
Standard condition 9 says that shall not restrict the public's right to use and pass freely upon the lands lying seaward of the high water mark for lawful purpose, and the license, and the licensee shall allow the public to use and to pass freely upon the area subject property lying between high, long, and low water mark for the purpose of fishing, fouling, navigation, and other derivatives. And it also says shall not limit the hours of availability of any areas that are public subject to designated for public passage, or nor place gates, fence, or other structures. So my issue is that I don't see, sometimes they have designated a specific route, but there's no designated route on this.
Well,
But
that-
are there signs so people can see that they can just climb up across
Between-
the middle
yeah.
of the,
It's between mean high water and mean low water, which is kind of in the,
it's between the land and the
Middle.
end?
yeah.
There's, there were no signs there today.
No, there were no signs. So I guess that will just be in this order.
But there will be signs as part of the order.
Yes.
Well, and the
Appropriate
reason I'm
condition.
asking this, if the access has to be given, and you're gonna have concrete trucks down there or whatever, is this the time that you do
Put
it?
your signs out?
Put your signs out and make it so you can get over it? And, because the railings will, if there'd be a break in the railing, obviously, there's gotta be a break in the railing. So, that's all. Other than that, that was it.
Mike?
Oh, no, one more question, precast. The steps that you're gonna put down at the end for the people to use, for the owners to use the water, you have them as, concrete steps. Are they gonna be precast concrete steps?
I believe the engineer that designed this said it was gonna, he thought they could cast it in place with marine concrete.
Below water, underwater?
Yes, you can
Okay.
put marine concrete below water.
I know you
The,
can put a,
The seawalls that are not far from here in deep water, up across the street down a little bit, there was marine concrete grouted below the water.
So they just build a form and then pour it?
Well, they have to pour it at a low tide, obviously, but
well, it's, it's below mean low
it's
water.
below mean high water.
It shows here
Below
below
mean
mean
low.
low water.
No.
On your plan, yes,
The
it
end shows it
does.
below mean low water, Mike.
Those say existing.
Oh, existing,
so
sorry,
those
to
are
remain.
saying
Sorry, Mike.
equal.
You're right.
The little bold lines. are
One
the
for
ones
Mike
that are-
tonight, one for
If
Mike.
you look at the cross-section,
He's always right.
No, he's not.
again, of course, the other answer is always.
Mike Powers. Do you have any questions for Mike McGrath?
Very neat detail on that rail. I like it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like these velocity zone things that can be taken down
Yeah.
in the off-season. Ted?
No, and I noticed some big trucks coming down that road before, and the 12% grade. The construction mat down there is a good. I don't know.
Okay, does anybody have any further questions? Do you have any further questions?
I don't really have big, I don't really have too much for purpose of the project.
Yep.
The site conditions, kind of issue.
So,
So may I have a,
Tom, you gonna?
Tom?
And I know I'm repeating myself, you know,
you
you
want
get
the
the,
methodology on that.
yeah, I really do, because, I,
Continue it.
you know, you're coming across here, you're going around the kid's play set, and you're going down that grade, and it's, you know, the concrete, I don't care what anybody says, I don't see how you couldn't pump that out, just because of the placement of the concrete, that's 120, 130 feet to the end. And your 8-inch placement, there's just, you know, there's a lot of material that's gonna go in there. And you're staging for a
How many cubic yards? 8 inches.
you're staging for the pump itself, and you're gonna have possibly 2 trucks, or if not more, and up here in the upland, so be it, you tear that up, big deal. But you do have a substantial amount of construction access that's in jurisdiction, and it's gonna be occupied by some real heavy, big stuff that has outriggers, and placement of concrete is not clean. There's certain portions when you're cleaning out hoses, if you're not careful, you discharge the marine concrete.
Mike, can you tighten up that methodology, provide more of a solid construction access for us?
Yes.
Get it to me by next Wednesday, and you can have the night.
And an area where maybe you can have a basin, a straw
Yeah.
bale thing where you're gonna discharge the slurry when if they clean it off and wash the truck down.
Yes.
And a volume of the concrete that's going to be poured?
By the way, it's 1-to-1.
Thank you.
Good.
Can you get that
You just got an update now?
Yeah. Yes.
Right now?
With that,
What do you, I didn't see you read
I'd
it.
like to make a motion on behalf of the applicant to
Quiet!
Wait a minute, I want to write down and agree out loud what we agreed to.
Yes.
I have a construction methodology to get the concrete down to the site.
Correct.
I'm going to give you a volume of concrete, and I'm going to give you some type of description of a way to catch the slurry when they...
Yes.
Yes, please.
Right, and how those
And a
trucks are
defined
going to keep from
staging area.
leaking oil there.
I'm not real concerned about that.
Yeah.
The vehicles are,
Mike, define staging area as well.
Yep. With a limit of work further. And then we need, there's the signs for where you're gonna locate the signs on the seawall and where you're gonna put a break in the rail for public access.
Yeah. So you can get that to me by next Wednesday, you can have the night. Focus, Mike.
I think he's listening to the game.
No, I'm not listening to...
I think he is, too.
I think he has an earpiece in.
I think
No,
so, too.
I have no earpiece in.
How did you know the score was 1-1? I didn't see
All
it.
I did was open this up and go like this.
You did not.
Mike, you're supposed to be concentrating. Do you want a continuance to May 9th?
Yes.
on behalf of the applicant, I'd like to make a motion to continue this to May 9th.
Second.
Okay, you got 2 seconds. Give it to Arthur. It's good to have his name in the minutes. Okay, all in favor of closing this hearing and
No,
take...
no,
No,
continuance
continuance.
to May
Thank you.
9th.
And it's nice that somebody is paying attention, unlike some people in the room. All in favor of continuing this hearing until May 9th, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Thanks, Mike.
Thank
I
you.
think Betsy has the earpiece.
Is it? It is. Okay, request for hearings under an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation. N-Star Electric, Lot 100, 400 Oyster Pond Road, formerly 54 Oyster Pond Road, Woods Hole. Request for confirmation of the following wetland resource area boundaries: bordering vegetated wetland / Atlantic white cedar swamp. Jen?
Madam Chairman, we went out to confirm the wetland boundary. We are in agreement with the flags that have been in place. They basically resurveyed and reflagged, and NRAD did that board that was removed prior at the time, and I believe that ORAD was issued in, give me 1 second, 2006? Is that right? Yeah, 2006. At that time, it was February of 2006, and it was, a note in the staff report that this might actually function as a vernal pool. Now today, and we did find
It is a vernal
biological
pool.
evidence
Oh,
of that. So
good.
we will confirm the wetland boundary, and we are going to add that this is a vernal pool.
Good.
Okay?
Yeah.
And I talked about that with Jeff this afternoon, Mike, okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you can close this, or we can issue the ORAD.
Closed.
So I have a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion to close this hearing and take it under advisement. All in favor, say Jen.
Aye.
Aye.
Oh,
All
right
in
here.
favor,
I am, you can put him here.
You did.
I did. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I know, she was mistaken.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. I'm sorry, Mike.
I've been hearing those words a lot from him lately.
I was going to say, unlike you, I'm not always correct. Vote orders of conditions.
I said, right.
Okay, Stephen and Dana Herrick, 196 Grand Avenue, Falmouth.
Okay, the forum on this is Ted, Mike, Maury, Betsy, Tom, Ed, and Arthur. I believe the only special condition on this one, Maury, this was the patio out on Grand
Yep, was
Ave.
it Rosa Ragosa?
Yep, you wanted 50% more, you wanted 50% Bayberry, 50% Rose.
Rosa,
You wanted a special condition that the plantings be installed in the grass.
right,
And you wanted a shift of the proposed cedars south to avoid the dry lot.
correct.
There was the butter issue about the fence, does the board want to address that?
Nope.
at all? No, okay, sounds good.
Maybe they can hash it out amongst themselves.
I did suggest perhaps they could talk to the neighbors.
Make a motion to accept orders as discussed.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. William McGann, 5 Foster Road, East Falmouth.
Hold on one second, Madam Chairman, Foster Road, Ted, Mike, Maury, Betsy, Tom, Edward, and Arthur. This was their reestablishment, and relocation of the pilings along Mr. McGann's property line and, putting boards between them to create a fence.
Okay.
What would the board like to do?
I have one comment I want to make, and that is, we were given a new town survey,
Yes,
and I think that town survey should be used in placing,
okay.
Yes,
because they delineated where the town land was.
yes.
And also, the applicant's representative agreed
Yeah.
that it would be, and if people can remind me of this, and I think Ted was the one who said it, 10 feet above mean high water is where the
No,
last post would be?
I didn't have a scale in me, but I believe it's, to my eye,
Right.
like it's 10 feet from the middle. See, the problem with those photographs is you're looking at it at an angle,
Right.
and it looks like it's really close, but if you actually scale on the plan, there was 10 feet between the old pilings
Correct.
and the last piling.
Correct.
Oh,
that's-
and the piling that's in the water,
confused.
the old
This right-
piling
yes,
in the
This
water.
distance right here.
Yeah.
Between this piling and the last piling proposed,
Yes.
there's 10 feet.
Okay.
So what do you want?
So
That's,
the photographs make it look like it.
All right, so that's,
But it's because you're.
so it's, is this the other, which plan is this? Their plan or the?
this is
Me over here.
the applicant's.
Yep, that's okay, just show me what you need.
10 feet between the last piling and pilings in the water.
Yeah, those old,
Okay, so we go from the pilings in the water as our known spot and come up 10 feet.
Correct.
10 feet on the surface, and that's where the last piling does. Okay?
Or that's the
closest
closest
Yep, no,
it could
got
be,
it.
that's
Yeah,
mean high water.
got it.
Yep.
But they offered, and I would like to urge, and you said that that's, technology is easy enough to install, that they screw those horizontal boards in and take them out during
You
the
can either do
Yeah,
that or,
non-season.
I think ropes.
I did talk to the applicant's representative about the possibility of using an alternative visual barrier in between the pilings. Like
Rope.
or chain, or something like that, that can, one, be installed with a little softer look. And,
less resistance to the wind and the
Less
waves
resistance
and,
to the wind, and they also can remove them. So that's up to the board. I mean,
I'm-
they were
I'm-
amenable, agreeable to that.
I am, to be
It's up
honest
to
with
you
you, I
guys,
am not agreeable, particularly if it was in more of a, not as public a space. The rope invites disaster.
Oh, okay, I
In
would
my
say-
eyes, I caretake for a property in the Heights that they used a slack rope, and next thing you know, it ends up being a tight rope, and it just ended up being hellacious. Yeah, with people on it, it was just hellacious.
Towel kind of.
And then,
well,
yeah,
actually, the boards, people can climb over easier than
but
the
they're
ropes.
rigid, they're not,
Because they're
Oh, no,
firm.
she's saying the
Yeah.
boards are better
The
than
boards are better
ropes.
for people to
Yeah.
climb over if they have to, because they're rigid and they
Just-
can step over, go over them,
and
versus the rope does have
I
slack in it.
just, my own personal experience, it just has always invited more curiosity, especially to younger folks or people who,
That's fine. If you want to
Imbibe.
go with the board's
A playground
rules and
effect,
it's
yes.
being able to be removed,
Maybe,
that's
maybe
fine.
a coiled rope with a life ring, where the people can't get,
See that
Can't
picture?
get past it.
That picture?
Okay, Ed?
they need to be rescued. Yeah, Madam Chair, I think we need to back up a little bit. The information before us indicates that the existing pilings that are being proposed to be relocated, these existing pilings are on town property of the town of Falmouth. And we have an applicant here requesting to move something from town property to his own property. But
But
he
he-
doesn't have any permission from the town of Falmouth. And I think it's been a very consistent understanding and regulation here that one can only request a permit to do work on their own property. If you want to do work on somebody else's property,
the pilings aren't there. He removed, the pilings described on town property have already been removed.
right,
They're
but
already-
this is,
they're gone.
the proposal is to relocate. And I'm
Yes.
saying relocate from here to there. And if you're going to relocate something from town property, that's work on town property. If this applicant wants pilings on his property, that's a whole different,
But the
that's a
testimony
request
was,
for new
the
pilings.
testimony was that these were from somebody who lived there for even longer than we've lived, that these pilings were put in on either side by private people when that was town property, but it just wasn't surveyed properly.
Correct.
In other words, they were put in by a private homeowner.
And now
Put on
the,
town property, well, regardless of the survey, they're on town property, they cannot be relocated. Even beyond that, to be putting structures in a velocity zone is an issue I have a great problem with. And therefore, any kind of horizontal boards from one piling to another are going to not only create a hazard in a storm, but they're restricting public access and cannot be permitted. They have not been there and they cannot be permitted.
They're required private property is required to allow public access for fishing, fowling, and navigation.
That's correct.
From mean high to mean low water. This fence will be from mean high above, which means mean high to mean low is still available.
Well, that brings us to the problem I brought up at the hearing. The stakes that are on the property right now are actually in the water. And the stake that reads, it's printed right on, it says, "End of fence."
well,
And
and
it was
what-
about, I didn't sit there with a tape measure, but it was about 8 to 10 feet from what was an obvious, very recent high water mark.
But it's mean high
there
water,
within
Ed.
the last 24 hours.
It's mean high water, which means mean high water over the past 19 years. That's a regulatory definition. It's
The
not
average-
what the high water was that day.
The average of the high tides over the last 19 years.
Yeah, that's what the regulatory definition of mean high water
Well, I have a
is.
big problem with that regulatory definition, as a matter of fact, because it conflicts with the reality on the ground. And that particular definition, permitting something to be constructed below the real current today high water mark, it puts it in conflict with the law that goes back 200 years that says you've got to provide access to the public to move along the area between the real, the law written 200 years ago said nothing about 19-year averages. And so you have this new interpretation of a law which conflicts it conflicts with the law as it's written.
Well, that law is Chapter 91, which we don't regulate. All we regulate is where this fence is.
This is not a Chapter 91
our-
hearing. This is a local Falmouth wetlands hearing, sir. I don't really care about Chapter 91. We're talking here about Falmouth wetlands regulations.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
we discussed this at the hearing. This, as proposed, I'd like to make a motion to accept, as discussed, this placing of the piles in the fence.
Including the 10-foot.
Correct.
From-
As discussed, where they have the minimal 10-foot separation between the existing piles in the surf to the first pile.
And that's the maximum seaward that last pile can go.
Correct,
You'll want bolted boards that are removable.
correct,
You want to use the town survey,
correct.
and your findings will include that the structure's in a V-zone, but that it's been in existence since the 1960s and is clearly shown in the aerials, and that it will be allowing public access in accordance with Chapter 91.
Correct.
And I just have one quick question.
Yep.
To maybe add to this. There was no discussion on the height of this fence? Is it a 1-rail, 2-rail?
It's a
The
2-rail
old
with a
fence was
4-foot.
2-rail.
Okay, 4-foot high,
No,
48,
no more than,
Do you want a height restriction on it?
definitely a height.
Oh, is there a-
It says 48 inches, so,
yep. The
Well,
ground-
that's difficult to do, because this is
Yeah.
a place where
Where it's
sand moves
dynamic.
in and out.
Yep.
yeah, and,
No higher than 48 inches from existing grade, from when they
Existing ground
install it,
surface. Correct.
it's a beach.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm confused. If this fence was on town property for 100 years, it would make it the town's fence in my.
That's mine.
Okay, so, now that it's gone, can a property owner say, hey, well, I want that fence back, but I want to put it on my property? That's where I'm a little stuck.
Over
Me too.
the testimony that I recall was that over the years, when repairs were done, they did not have a survey, they did line of sight, and that migrated it towards the public land, only because it wasn't engineered, it wasn't placed.
How far
It just
off was it,
migrated
though, Tom, do you
3
know?
feet.
3
At-
feet?
At the most,
I think it was more like 7 feet.
7 feet.
7 feet
Yeah, it was
off the
7
island.
feet.
One of
Okay.
the major concerns with the residents of that neighborhood was the fact that it was encroaching onto town property. So this is where it gets confusing. They want to reestablish the fence to give the applicant a clear line between his property and the town property.
The abutters do?
The abutters do and the property owner does.
Okay.
The abutters' concerns were the fact that this fence, whoever installed it 60, 70 years ago, kind of eventually did one of these into town property, and there was a severe encroachment onto town property. Does the fence belong to the town?
Well, apparently those things.
The fence is not there anymore. The pilings were damaged and the applicant removed them. Did he have permission from the town to
No.
remove them?
No, he did not.
No, he did not.
But is there evidence that that fence was ever at all on the owner's property? On the applicant's
No.
property?
No, well, we have the old chapter 91 license and
He put those in.
And the old Chapter 91 license shows it on town property.
the old chapter 91 license shows it within the Davisville Road layout. Yes.
That's town property.
What year was that license? I forget.
The license, the license was issued in December '09. The plan was done in '08.
Who was it issued to? Who was the Chapter 91 license issued to?
To McGann. He got a license
former-
on town property. Well, that's what it says. Plan accompanying petition of William McGann.
It was licensed to Mr. McGann, correct.
Right, so he licensed
But
the structure
actually,
on town
no.
property?
This is for maintaining the existing jetty. This wasn't for the pilings. So
All right.
the pilings are shown on this plan, the pilings themselves are not licensed.
Right.
The stone jetty is licensed.
So in
Because it's
essence, we're
above-
creating a new structure on his property.
That's correct.
That's what he's proposing.
Right. But he's saying that he's just moving his structure over, a fence that was there that just somehow got put in the wrong place. And, of course, you know how
Well,
I
there was a fence there, and it was a fence that was put up. I mean, I don't know, I wasn't back then, but the testimony was that there was a fence there, and the fence was put up by the property owner.
No, it was Mr. Davis put it up, not this Mr. McGann.
Well, the property owner at the time.
Well, Mr. Davis owned all the land there. He's the one that gave the land, I think, to the town, the
Maybe
beach.
that's why it's called Davisville.
That's
Well,
exactly.
then-
Was Village
Well,
last
there
name?
was, there was also
I'm just
testimony,
throwing that out there.
there was testimony given that two separate people had these structures put up, because the one was on the doctor, on the other side, where that structure goes right out onto the groin. That's
That
on
one's
the land.
totally illegal. Mr.
Well,
Cedrone's?
That's not the
I'm just saying.
That's another whole,
I know it's not in front of us, but I'm just trying to bring you up to speed on what I recall, all right? What we had done was that there was testimony given in that private people put both sides of these fences up, all right?
So they're both
And that there was repairs done periodically to the fence that we are now reviewing. In that, it was line of sight repair. It was not an intentional grabbing of properties. It was an encroachment that was arbitrary because people just didn't think it was that critical. However, now that we live in this world that we do, you damn well better be sure your stuff is on your property. He is now.
Well, I'm with Ed now.
Yeah.
If this was a fence that was put up by Mr. Davis, and there was no town property at the time, and that's where it was put, then
it belongs to the
basically
town.
Mr. McGann's, well, the town's not gonna put up a fence
No,
again.
no.
But Mr. McGann is asking for basically a new fence, and it's a new fence in a velocity zone.
That's correct.
And I'm
Exactly.
not comfortable with a new fence in a velocity zone.
And I
That's where
think
I'm
I
headed.
just heard someone say something a short time ago about the abutters wanted something here. The abutters don't want this structure there at all. There's no
I think the
testimony,
abutters were-
there's no testimony otherwise by any abutter that says they want this thing to happen.
And then I would like to, in this
Well, what the
whole-
abutter said was, we don't want it on town property.
That's-
They didn't say, we do want it on the neighbor's property. They said, we don't want it on town property. And so we can just leave it at that.
And the other thing, if you look at that December 10, 09 plan, there are only 4 pilings there. Now they're proposing, I think, 8 or 7 or 9 or something. So it's changed dramatically from,
That's from 3 codes.
no, they're not, they go all the way up here. 1, 2,
Those are
3,
already-
4, 5, 6. They go all the way up into the
Those
dune.
are the ones that are already existing though.
Am I right or wrong? Maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, it's the only dark,
they're
the dark drawing is the only part that's proposed.
Oh, well, now, wait a minute, it says typical,
Yes, yeah.
and it shows 2 sections. And a 12-foot board, so.
Are we
you're right,
all
I
on
don't know
this-
if that goes up enough.
Jen?
Doesn't say what the extent of the fence. But it's all on
Susan,
this property.
are we all on this quorum?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Well, I made a motion, and
You made a motion to accept. Did somebody second it? Because we need a positive motion on the table.
Did somebody second that? Yes, they did. I thought-
Who seconded?
Oh, I'll just second it for, so we
Okay.
can do something with it.
So does anybody want to make some other comments, further comments? Okay, motion on
Yeah, my
the,
further comment is, with the only thing that's shown on the Chapter 91 license from some years ago that's before us is pilings, nothing about horizontal beams connecting those pilings.
right, and the license has nothing to do with that. See, I thought the
Right,
license
right.
No, the
was,
license
I thought
was
it,
for
those,
the stone
that
thing.
was licensed.
So there's no
Okay,
record of any horizontal horizontal boards going from one piling to another. It has, that concept has no history. No recorded history.
well, it does have a recorded history in that it's in aerials that go way back, aerial photographs.
And then to replace.
It's clearly a
the existing
fence.
And there was also
3 on the
testimony from one of the abutters that
That's-
explained the history of it,
Right.
that there was a fence.
That there was a fence.
And that
They're gonna
Yeah.
replace
periodically,
those
the
too.
repairs done to it is how it generated over onto
There
the
are 3
town
piles
property.
right here.
Right, well, I'm
today
not-
on the ground.
That's what they said, but I'm not quite clear of that
Yes,
part.
that are gonna go.
But at any rate, the motion on the table is to accept the fence. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed.
Abstain.
Put your hand.
Put your hands up. Get your hands up.
Okay, 4
I don't
opposed.
think I've ever heard Susan talk that forcefully before.
She wants to go watch.
Four-
That's living with an FBI agent for 45 years.
She wants to see the rest of the room.
Whoa! We're glad you're speaking up,
Who
Susan.
said no?
We
That-
said
that
no.
was-
We 4 said no.
Who said yes?
No, you said no.
I said no. right.
Yeah,
1 yes.
2 yeses.
2 yeses
And 1 abstention.
Yes.
and 1 abstention.
Who were the yes? Mike?
Tom and Mike.
Tom and Mike.
And Arthur was an abstention.
Okay?
Everybody ready to move on to
Yes.
breakaway panels?
Absolutely.
I'm
Robert
not on this one.
and Joanne Fallon, 71 and 75 Little Island Road, West Falmouth.
I'm never gonna get out of this.
Should we ask if this is a particular application people are here to see, so maybe we could get that out of the way so they don't have to sit here all night?
Is anyone, you're okay? You okay?
Well, I was going to try to speak to you when the meeting was over.
No.
On this West Falmouth Harbor business, I thought maybe Mr. McCaffrey was going to be here. And I wrote my one-page version. It's titled, A Brief History of Mashantucket Creek, 1972 to 2012. And I wrote up a little thing. And I brought a couple of old pictures. And I was hoping to, I don't know if that committee that Mr. McCaffrey was involved in is still in existence.
They are. What I suggest is, the next time there's a ponds committee, I'll call you up.
You will call me.
I'll
That's
call you and you
excellent.
can come, and that's when you should discuss that.
Thank you very much. And I had indicated to Ms. McKay that I would speak to her, but Ms. McKay, that's what I wanted to say.
Oh, okay, I just didn't want you to have to sit here all night.
Thank you. I would be sitting at home watching, and after I was here to start.
Do you want to
then
leave
I-
a copy of what you have, Nancy, and
I
I can
can
make a
certainly do
copy
that,
for the
yes.
board, and
Yeah.
then I'll distribute
Yeah.
it.
I
to
actually
them.
have 8 copies.
Oh, thank you, Nancy. I didn't want you to have to sit.
Okay, that's
here.
great, thank you. You're okay, and Mike, you're sitting here because you enjoyed this meeting?
I know why Mike's here.
I knew that, Mike.
You knew that I would lie? I said yes.
Well, Mike, you don't want me to say that in public.
It's still 1-1, it's end of the second, they're, I think they're starting the third.
Jen, would you,
Are we on the third one?
we're on Robert and Joanne Fallon, 71 and
Okay,
75 Little Island Road.
This is for the raise and rebuild of the structure at the end of Little Island Road. There was a significant amount of testimony given regarding the velocity zone issues, the breakaway panelings, some of the concerns the staff had regarding the septic and whether it was float. That was, all that information was provided to you. I think the board does need to have a discussion on one, if you will allow the structure to be rebuilt, if you think it's an enlargement in the velocity zone, or, and 2, if you do allow that, would you allow breakaway panel? Those are the questions you need to answer.
Okay, does anybody want to,
Oh, I'm sorry. Form's right there. I got it. I'm gonna have to let them know. Ed, Tom, Betsy, Arthur, Mike, and Ted.
okay, everybody but Maureen.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll start off.
okay, good.
Okay. Being site-specific as I like to be, you know, the use of breakaway panels on this project, I don't think really matters, because if you look at it, and you look at the elevation, you know, the seaward side of this would be open to the,
But the other side is
but the other
closed.
side wouldn't be. So any energy that goes through, any wave action, any water that goes through is gonna be trapped anyway. So in my opinion, I don't think the breakaway panels mean anything.
Yeah, so
In general, I'm for breakaway panels.
you're gonna have a,
It's gonna be open here and closed in the back.
well, open but with breakaway panels.
Yes, well,
But
exactly.
you're
Saying
saying
there
that,
wasn't
you're
any,
saying
yeah.
even if it were a solid wall, it's a solid wall here or a solid wall here.
You got it.
Yeah. What I don't agree with, though, is Mr. McGrath's argument in the letter that breakaway panels are gonna keep moisture, et cetera, away. That's why we asked about the kind of, wait, can I finish? Mm-hmm. That's why we asked about the kind of material that was gonna be used, and the testimony was that the, what's it called?
Closed cell
Isonine, closed-cell isonine. The testimony was, the reason you do that is that even if it gets wet underneath, it's not going to mold. So the argument that these breakaway panels is going to be somehow protecting that is lessened. I'll put it that way.
And what about the velocity zone?
Yeah, well,
Actually kind of nailed that down as well.
We're not,
Yeah, but
we're
hold on,
not there
we're not
yet.
there yet. Yeah, but you know, to rebut that, I mean, that, to me, that's not my reasoning for allowing the panels, you know? That argument really doesn't come into play
Oh, I
as
just,
far as my
I just wanted
decision.
Mr. McGrath to know that I didn't buy that
Yeah, okay.
argument, though.
Well, with no heat into that area, you've got issues, and
Yes,
You're gonna have moisture
when
problems.
you put it, yes, you do. Even though you have the structure insulated underneath, you're talking about, you're not gonna have 14 inches on a floor joist of isonine closed cell. You have a certain amount. And
2
it's
inches.
only, say it's even 5, or even 6, half the depth, 7 inches, which is an extreme amount of insulating value. You do have to sheathe off the bottom of that. Underneath the house, in that element, the wind-driven snow, all that type of thing, when you can, and site-specific too, I would not be as inclined to be this promoting on a house on Surf Drive, all right, with a breakaway panel. That's a totally different element as opposed to this and how it's placed on the lot. But just because something has plywood covering underneath, that does not eliminate corrosion factors and all the elements that actually attack a house. The only way to do that is to minimize what, and control the building envelope in there. It is far more energy efficient to have the structure encapsulated like that. It just makes a lot of sense structural-wise for the integrity of the environment of the building. All that being said, I went on the interweb as best I could. I went to North Carolina, Florida, Texas, and Louisiana. And I tried my darndest to get through breakaway panels and every description of building code, all this type of thing. Tell you what, Louisiana is interesting. They mirror most everything, that all the breakaway walls to collapse from elevated pieces. That was kind of a generic term, that the structural piece breaks away, hence the breakaway panel. Non-supporting walls, all these things, walls below the Florida BFE, whatever that's their designation for the flooding. Right, all these little doodahs. The restless ribbon of sand, the barrier islands in North Carolina, walls below elevated buildings must be breakaway. The only real common denominator they had was no utilities in that space, which is what we wouldn't have anyways. And they're talking, they overlap with FEMA V zones, NGVD 1929 flood insurance maps, all kinds of things. And these are areas that have had substantial storms.
But
In
those
a-
are, those are building regulations. They're not necessarily conservation regulations.
No, that's not all true. On looking through this, the investigating, I did talk to a builder from Mississippi, and he happened to be at the lumberyard. The conservation there, mirrored a lot of what, the structural pieces, so they're not flowing into flotsam and jetsam. That was the biggest concern. And I think we've addressed that here as far as a conservation issue. I have very strong confidence that not only would this be better because it's elevated and out of a lot of it out of the structure that's there now is not as flood-worthy as this is. You know, we're getting all this out. In the event of something very catastrophic and there being an event that would actually encroach on this and take out a breakaway panel, the rest of this, all around here, there's going to be de minimis effect from this project that would affect anything in a flood situation as I see it.
Okay.
With the storm panels.
As far as enlargement in a velocity zone, this is a velocity zone. This is an enlargement in a velocity zone. However, we, as our regulations stand now, I mean, we really can't limit people, not necessarily this house is getting a lot bigger, but suppose somebody has a little, 600 square foot cottage in a velocity zone on a piece of land that cost $1 million. You say he can enlarge 200 feet, these people can enlarge 200 feet. We really don't have it written in our regulations. That's partly why we should work on those flood zones once we're done with the procedures. I mean, that's how I feel.
Okay.
Do you feel it's in the velocity zone or out? Or do you not?
Oh, it's definitely in the velocity zone. Velocity zone is three-dimensional. And,
No, you don't mean that, do you?
yes, I do.
Okay, then-
Actually, I sent you
So
all
if you
some-
raise the structure, you're out of the velocity zone, is that
You
what
are
you're
not
saying?
out of the velocity, you are in the velocity zone.
Velocity zone
Velocity
has
zone
no
is
top.
three-dimensional. It's
But it has
X,
no top,
Y,
right.
and Z.
It has no top, so it's
Yes.
not three-dimensional. Those who say you can raise the structure above and you're out of the velocity zone, that's what I'm calling a three-dimensional. And I say, well, if you're out of the velocity
he's
zone,
saying
what
it's
zone
not-
are you in?
No,
You're
no,
sort
no.
of up in
No,
the air
we're on the
somewhere.
same, you and I agree.
Yeah, we
I'm-
agree, but a
Well,
little
you know where I get-
semantics.
Our
are different.
semantics
Yeah,
are,
where I get confused is why raise the structure then? I mean, lift it. I mean, if we're not, if we're still in the velocity zone, why do we raise
because,
the elevation of the structure?
because you're raising the elevation of the structure so that if there is a big storm, this structure has a good chance to survive that storm because
So
water
you're
can go
raising it up
through.
above the velocity zone?
No, it's not above the velocity
Raising
zone.
it up
You're,
in-
you're raising
I don't know
it,
if I agree with that.
you're raising it to,
To get out of the energy, which would be the velocity,
Yeah, the 3-foot wave.
you're raising it to get out of the 3-foot wave zone.
which is really what the velocity is.
Wind is velocity.
But the zone is a
No,
flat thing on ground
I
surface.
agree with that, but I kind of disagree. I think they're talking velocity of the water. That's where the energy,
What people don't realize is what is called the still flood zone.
Yep.
Still water flood zone, the A zone.
yeah.
There's a lot of velocity in that water. The difference between the A zone and the velocity zone is that this is going to have breaking waves at whatever the elevation level is. That's the difference. That's the difference
The
between
flood
those two
zone, the
zones.
flood zone, the still flood zone may have velocity, may not have velocity. That's why it's called the still flood, right?
It depends on where it
Okay,
is.
okay.
But I can tell you, people who
It has
were in both the
flowing water.
54 storm and in Bob, where they were in A zones, the water rose very quickly. So, you know, it depends on which direction the wind's coming from, whether it's high tide, there's lots to it.
10.38, the zones are described.
Any gentlemen?
We don't have
Any
I
comments?
understand all the issues, but I just see
storm flowage.
good, everything's getting better on this site.
Yeah.
And they're living there year round.
And the depths one
And
to
I
3 feet.
wouldn't want to have my bottom floor exposed in the depths. I mean, this was a nice winter, but the normal winter we get here, that is
Wait,
one
it's
nasty
greater than 3 feet.
thing to have your
That's why
floor,
it makes it
your
easier.
decking exposed.
Yeah. Well, especially in
Would
this,
I-
in
I'd rather
this
have-
case
I'd
where you
rather
have
the
a,
panels there to block and encapsulate that area, give it dead
Because it has a
airspace
dead-
as
Above the
best as
already-
possible
right.
The tidal surface.
for heat
Mike?
conservation there.
Again, in my own mind, I broke it into two pieces.
Wait a second. Yeah,
The first, the new structure is
Agreed that.
better than the old in terms of protecting what we're charged to protect. It is getting it out, there will be less material. The second issue in favor of this is the panels are better for the structure and better for the people who live in it than not having the panel. There's just missing that. The counter-argument to that for mine is that you're losing control of what is in the velocity zone once you pull the panel out. It could be a pool table, it could be a can of gasoline, it could be anything on that first floor. You've lost control of that, it's gone. I mean, whatever the owner puts on that floor is what's there.
right.
And
And that's why,
those are the two conflicting.
right, and that's why there are some places where we have not allowed, for instance, people had garages where they were gonna have cars and lawn mowers and other stuff like that, and they didn't allow breakaway panels because, first of all, they wouldn't have even functioned there,
Well-
because there was stuff stored there.
Well, now I'm down to where I don't have the historical knowledge of how the board has treated panels and what distinguishes this different from any other.
Well, one of the main reasons is what Tom brought up, and what you're talking about here, that the inner boundary is defined by that slope, the way the house is built. In other words, this is not a flow-through system.
Right, that's a,
And it's situated in the optimum direction for where the force is gonna be coming from. It's coming from the south, southwest. That's where the hurricane force is gonna go. Always.
So the argument is,
And I had some pretty bad coastal flooding storms after Bob. That was a nor'easter that
Nor'easter.
came in.
Yeah,
Bob,
but
I
that's-
mean, Bob
but
was
this
a
isn't-
hurricane. Bob
this
came
isn't
up from the
exposed to
south.
that.
That no-name
But-
storm, that was a nor'easter that came from the other direction.
but
Yeah.
but in terms of,
But if you're talking about a
You
12-foot
can't say.
tide
stuff.
No, I understand. I'm
with
just saying
velocity,
that you
that's
have
the
some
hurricane that's
powerful-
coming from that side,
from the west side.
southwest.
Well,
It's gotta
It could be south, I mean, the eye could be coming right up Buzzards
Yeah.
Bay. Or it could be anywhere.
But, I mean, in terms of motion, potential damage to the structure, that
Yep.
west or northwest direction with all that fetch across
Yeah,
Buzzards Bay,
and you have a little island out there to protect and
well,
also.
in one direction to the northwest, you don't. If you take a westerly shot right out of that front door, it goes right across Buzzards Bay.
It's a pretty big bluff out there too, after you
It
enter.
is
Have you
it's
seen the
about the
bluff on
same
the left?
elevation.
Not a little island, I'm talking about the end of the road, Little Island Road.
But what we're saying is, the distance is, there is this natural barrier being the soil on the west, east
Right,
side.
right.
North and
That-
northeast.
that
I mean, that's
prevents
gonna
it-
be there no matter what direction the water
Yeah.
comes from.
Right.
I'd just like to make one comment, adding on to what Mike said a few moments ago, and that's, I'll just make the observation that in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be making a trip down to the Outer Banks in North Carolina, and I'm going to be sleeping on a bedroom on a ground floor, which is surrounded by breakaway panels.
Aha!
Okay, that's great. Can we move along, guys? Let's
let's put a motion on the table.
Discussion
Fine.
focus, please.
Tom.
Make a motion to accept the
A TV would be nice.
There is a TV there as
project
well.
as discussed.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
Second.
Wait a minute, motion on your table is to what?
Is to accept it as discussed.
Okay.
Any other comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Thank you, Susan.
That was unanimous?
Don't go, Susan, we're not done yet. Mike, why don't you just stay until we're finished in case you have something to report to us? We only have two more to go.
Mike, you can go.
He's sitting there.
Mike, you can go.
I should have turned it.
I'd be lying if I said I
Owns the bloody-
Don't
Eva
lie.
Nielsen, 94 Oyster Pond Road.
Watch things down on this.
This one's pretty straightforward.
Corn Sullivan.
I'm not on that one, am I?
No, Maura's not on it.
I'm not on any of the last,
The only, I
any of
think,
them.
concern on this one was the location of the path in relation to the top of the bank.
Correct.
And the discrepancy between,
Right, and you check that out.
McGrath's plan, Mike Talbot's plan. I can assure you, when I went out there with Mike Talbot and discussed the placement of those shrubs, the shrubs were gonna be on the bank. There were gonna be no warm season cool grasses that are going down the
Okay.
bank.
Coastal savannas?
Coastal savannas.
I refer to them as happy grasses.
May I have
Coastal
motion,
savannas.
please?
There'll be no coastal savannas down the bank, it will be all shrubs. Is that take care of the concerns that some of you had, Ted?
So,
that-
yeah, so Tom's reminding me, should we put a 5-year permit
So
to
that we
allow
have the
monitoring for
Yes.
5 years?
Make a motion to accept as discussed.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Okay, Sebastiano, oh, this is the nice alliteration. Sebastiano and Susan Santostefano, 3 Black Beach Hills Road.
I don't remember of any special conditions you guys wanted on this particular project. This was from, Zach from Bracken Engineering.
Did he relocate?
Special condition propane nestled between the two boulders will coordinate with staff. Okay, so there was the issue with the propane tank.
And they increased some buffer plantings
Yeah,
where,
that's right.
where there
Yes,
had
and
been
then
some
there were
shrubs.
questions
They addressed
about-
my question.
Right.
Yeah, there were questions, and Zach came in and answered the questions and provided a new plan and
Right,
looked at the location of the propane tank, which Mike was concerned about,
right.
so.
So I'll accept,
No, I need a form.
it's everyone but
Me.
Maury.
I don't think I'm on any of the other
Same
ones.
quorum.
Actually, you're on next week's,
May I have a motion, please? Let's stick with the one we're on.
Motion to accept as discussed.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved.
night, Nancy.
Angela and Dennis, Nancy, you almost heard us out. We only have one more tonight. Angela and Dennis
Actually, you have
Martinez.
both of them, you have all of them,
Oh, you have them?
Good night,
Oh.
Nancy.
yeah.
Good night, Nancy. You don't want to stay. We have 3 more. 140 Saconesset Road, Falmouth.
This was, they revised the planting plan, they brought in the planting plan from Teresa.
Yeah, they left the trees.
They left the trees that Courtney wanted to save.
Yep. May I have an entertained motion?
Make a motion to accept as discussed.
Actually, let me.
May I have a second?
Hang on, let me check that form.
Yeah.
Second.
People are just seconding, they don't. I'm trying to find as fast as possible.
Those of us who were on it know that we were on it.
Yeah.
Maury wasn't on it, it was Edward.
Well, see, Ed didn't think he was on it, and Maury knows
I
she's
knew
not
I
on
was
it.
not.
And I knew I was on
Okay,
it.
those of us, me too, those of us who know we were on it, here's our
We saw it
chance.
together.
We're sticking together. We have a motion and a second, but Ed gave the second and he wasn't on it, so I'm gonna ask
No,
Arthur.
I gave the second.
Oh, Arthur gave it,
Because
all
I
right.
knew I was on it.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. All right, David and Kim Capobianco, 316 Edgewater Drive East.
All of them.
Now, wait a second. I wasn't on this one, was I?
Yes, your name is on here. This was the little
Yeah.
seawall, remember from Mr. O'Day,
Yeah.
John O'Day?
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
We closed one last week, though.
You closed 316 Edgewater Drive East
And
and
T-ticket
115
pass.
T-ticket last week. You don't meet next week, which is why you're discussing them tonight.
Oh, right. Good, so we don't have to meet.
We can if you really want.
Anybody have any discussion on this one? Actually, I'm going to be away in the middle of next week. All right, then I'll entertain a motion. Do you have any special?
What, is this the one that had the?
Yep,
This
little
is-
patio.
The patio, the wall, this was the revetment that they were putting in the
Behind the
piling
concrete.
behind the concrete, and
Correct.
then they
Got
removed
it.
the concrete.
Got it?
And he was gonna come back to us about this trench he was doing behind there. They're gonna have the concrete wall fall into the trench. Remember? And we
You
were-
guys closed the hearing, he didn't provide anything.
He said he said he's gonna consider that trench again.
Okay, so
We didn't
then-
know if the machine could get that, can the machine stay out 6 feet away from the wall and drive those
Pilings.
piles?
And then make sure that the stones can actually go back.
Okay,
So-
That was the only thing I remember.
okay.
About that, it stood out.
and
So if that
resi-
doesn't, if he does have to change the methodology, then he has to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Correct. So moved.
Second? Okay. All in favor of the motion on the table, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Peter and Mary Beth Walsh, 115 T-Ticket Path.
Same form. I don't think there was anything that was presented to you last week by Matt Costa. It was the very long kind of
Oh, yeah,
house that they were
With the
putting
little-
all the little additions
making a little-
on and
right.
Barracks.
add-ons and,
yep.
The barracks.
yes, then they had the little trellis
neighborhood,
down.
when it's in it.
yeah. And he was putting the plant, they had the big, landform. It's actually a bank, but it's a big landform in back, and putting the plantings in between that.
Yeah,
and-
yeah.
Right.
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
How about a second?
What are you moving?
As
To accept
discussed.
it.
Okay.
All in favor of the motion on the table, which is to accept this order as discussed, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. I have one quick thing of other business, and that is, I told you that we didn't get the last grant, but I just want to tell you that I'm meeting tomorrow to put in a pre-proposal to see if we can apply for another grant. Just want to let you know
Before you do it,
before I do it, which
did you ask the selectmen?
has to be by Friday. No, I can do a pre-proposal, and they can say I could do it, and then I don't have to ask the selectmen until I get to the proposal stage.
Can I make a motion to adjourn?
You may.
Thank you.
Can I get a comment before we adjourn? I came across something in the paper recently, it was, you might want to check the internet, quoting, Bernard Baruch, and also late Senator Patrick Moynihan of New York, both sort of sharing the same concept in it. It says, "Every man has a right to his own opinion, but no man has a right to be wrong in his facts." It's sort of something to think about a lot, because it does emphasize to me how, I guess most of the time when we disagree, and I think when the selectmen disagree, when our national representatives disagree, it's probably because people are seeing the facts differently. They have a different set of facts, and that's why they come to different conclusions. So it's very, very important. They always make sure we get all our facts right. That's my speech.
Sometimes people don't want to see the facts, Ed. People would rather make decisions without facts.
We have a motion and a second.
I made a motion to adjourn, I don't know
We
what.
need a second.
Somebody second adjournment?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, unanimous, so moved.
That's why somebody asked a few years ago about the Arabs.
Sign.